Hour is 7 o'clock. I'm going to call to order the Harris Township Board of Supervisors. We're going to start with a public hearing. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so our public hearing is proposed ordinance 375, technical and grammatical updates to chapter 11.
Staff recently completed an ongoing project that began following codification of the Township Code of Ordinances several years ago. Through the years, minor technical issues and grammatical punctuation inconsistencies have been compiled by staff with the intent to correct those identified with a comprehensive repeal and readoption of Chapter 11, which is a subdivision and land development ordinance. Included with the agenda was a copy of edits included in proposed ordinance number 375 that was finalized by the board in April. The CRPC has reviewed the proposed ordinance, and a copy of their review letter is included with the agenda.
Are there any public comments on this item?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, we are adjourned. Okay, now we'll start with the Harris Township regular meeting. I call it to order. First item is the approval of the minutes from June 9th.
Motion to approve those. Both of them. June 9, there are two sets there.
From the public hearing,
Yeah.
yeah. Any comments, amendments, problems? All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. The minutes are approved. Next up is citizen comments. And citizen comments are an opportunity for citizens of the let me get through my spiel first. So we invite people to have comments on any item that is not in the agenda. Okay, so,
Okay.
yes.
Well, my name is Bud Graham, resident of Harris Township. I have one declaration right before I get going here. I did wear my official shirt tonight.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. Well,
You wear well, bud.
But turn around so the camera can take a picture of that.
you seen that?
You wear well, bud.
That's an
You wear
inside
well.
joke.
Well, this, about 2005, we voted to institute Hess softball field into the Regional Parks program. If it was handled by the State College Softball Association, I believe. And with that, we had certain requirements. And it was to be the first field developed under the Regional Parks program. And so we developed this plan in 2009. And in this plan, it lays out how this would go through the three regional parks. Hess Field was first, Oak Hall Regional Park was second, and then Whitehall Road in for finish of phase one. There's going to be in 3 phases. So right now, I want to discuss Hess Field right now. It is in worse shape than it was before we got it. The fields are nice, but the field itself is almost embarrassing. About 2 years ago, well, whenever I was on the board, I moved that Hess Field be moved up as a priority, get it finished, and the general forum passed it. And they worked at it, but they've never done anything more. They talked about it, discussed it. It's all gone away. So I think it's time it gets done. I was out there. There's no sanitary facilities. There's some porta potties in 110-degree temperature, 109-degree temperature, and there's as I was watching your authority meeting. There are 21 teams they had 21 team tournament out there, and there are 51 softball teams that play between the 3 of them, and the conditions are horrible out there. There's no sanitary facilities. There's porta potties that get to be who knows what goes inside, and it's just embarrassing for young ladies and young men both for the youth to go out there and do that. So it's time to get moving on that. So I'm asking you, I'm starting on a low level right here, I guess, grassroots, as a board, to commit and to start pushing the general forum, or and in turn pushing whoever controls it to get that field straightened out. Part of the plan was, if I can find it, was to umpire quarters, concession stands, and bathrooms, flush bathrooms. Now, before we gave it to Forest Rec, they had flush bathrooms, and they had a concession stand, but code made them tear them all down. So it's time we get that back there. Now, there was discussion that I thought it was said and done last year. They're going to rent or buy nice facilities, portable facilities, on trailers, and put out there, maybe leave them there or rent them. Nothing has happened. So it's time that something happens out there. So I'm going to urge you to go to the next general forum meeting to get them on the ball and get something happen out there this year. There's plenty of playing time this year, and we've got $2 million invested in that field, and I just drove out there the other day. There's nothing but porta potties, nothing. There's no concession stands. When you play, you have to be there. You just can't leave and come back. So I'm going to urge you to as a board, to go to whoever does it, Parks and Rec, or whoever, I guess, I don't know what committees you're on anymore, Bruce, I'm not sure, but something has to happen. It has to happen this year. It's just ridiculous.
Let me intervene, but, in fact, Ben, who is the director of COG, can probably comment on that as well as I with respect to what's in this plan for Hessfield.
In 60?
Pardon?
In the 60?
Yeah. There are a number of things in this document speaking to what you're talking about, Bud.
They speak it, but they don't do anything.
Well,
It's been done. It's time. It's time to get it done. But we can still do it this year.
It's just seems to be, from
No,
what I've seen,
I'm not gonna argue, give me all the excuses you want, I'm
No,
just
no, no,
making
no,
a statement.
I'm saying, I'm frustrated as well, because it just seems to be thrown back and forth and back and forth and back
Right,
and forth.
exactly.
And I'm disgusted that Whitehall Road got as far as it could without Hess getting anywhere.
Well, the point is, Hessfield is so, it was voted on 2 years ago to make that prioritize that, to get, so I know there's all sorts of excuses why you can't put a sand mine, why you can't take Spring Spring sewer in. It goes on and on and on. Get it done. Get it done. We've got $2 million of taxpayers' money invested in there. It's almost embarrassing. The fields are great. Fields are nice, but there's nothing else out there. And that was what our intent was when we took that over. It was make it a regional park and make it as nice as Whitehall Road is, or as Oak Hall is. So that's my comment about that part.
seen the report that Bud has, the one done by Pashek out of Pittsburgh?
Yeah. I mean, they're not following me. It's outdated.
Oh, it is.
But the point is that we've been doing this since 2009. And it's time to do it. Every year, I thought we were getting somewhere at our last, at your last budget sessions with this. They're going to do this. They're going to get those nice porta potties on trailers. We'll have facilities. I thought they're going to bring them in. Nothing happened. So something needs to happen. That's my comment. Okay. Now the next one is Whitehall Road Regional Park, and that is another boondoggle right there. We've got $7 million invested in that park, and we can't use it. There's nothing wrong with that park. I went out the other day. The Parks and Rec has it maintained beautifully. The playing fields are beautiful. There's lights. They have a playground facilities out there that's going to be better than we've ever had. They've been installed for 3 years. We can't even. Your kids aren't even allowed near the dang things. So we need to allow that. But I know I just checked today. I know we're going to hear excuses, but I'm not. I don't have answers for all your excuses. Stahl Schaefer submitted a plan to the engineering firm that does stormwater management for Ferguson Township. And then Ferguson Township hasn't got it yet. So this firm, engineering firm, is going to have to put it back to Stahl Schaefer to correct it. It's no more getting ready to open in the next 3 months than it was 6 months ago. And it's I don't know why you can't make a temporary use out there, conditional use. Why not? Open it up. It's beautiful. $7 million. We're talking about wasting the taxpayers' money. That is. And okay, that's why I'm coming here to start. I don't know what you're going to do about it, but I think it needs to start on the local level with us, Harris Township. Say, okay, it's time to do something. So that's it.
Yes. I would like to, with our work session tomorrow, I'd like to have a little discussion on this, because I did make some comments similar to what he's saying at the finance committee. You know, if you all have been through your committees, they did pass a quote updated plan for Hessfield, and I just said it's a smokescreen, just like what he's saying. That's just a way of kicking it down the road. You know, it's ridiculous. I asked if anybody had talked to Corey Miller, because if we want SOAR down here, I said, anybody talk to UAJA and see what we got to do? They're on our team. Why can't we do something? No, everybody looked at me like, you know, deer in a headlight. Nothing's happening. We don't have managers, job site managers and project managers in COG. That's not their job. We need, if we want to get this fixed, we got to go out, hire a project manager and get it done. Same thing as Whitehall Park. I said, get everybody in the same room and don't let anybody leave till it's all signed off. They can't seem to do that.
It's too late to do that. It's too late. Let's open it up. Get temporary occupancy and open it up. Let the public use it. We got $7 million worth of beautiful land out there. It's a stormwater issue. And I don't see how stormwater issues are going to affect kids playing on the playground out there. They're worried about stormwater getting into, I don't know the minutiae of it, stormwater getting into the well fields over a mile away. That's interesting. I don't know what it is. I haven't read it. I'm not an engineer. I wouldn't know. But you can open that park up without, it's not going to affect anybody's play out there. You know, just open it up. Tell Walter to issue a temporary or a contingency and open it up. I know he's afraid that, last thing he says, well, who's going to pay for it if it needs repair? That is an issue that the public doesn't need to care about. We got $7 million. Stop sitting out there. Let's use it. Open it up.
He's sitting in the audience, but
Who's that?
Walt.
Where, Walt? Where's he at? Oh, there he is. Right, can you open that up?
No.
Why? See, there's going to be an excuse for this. And the excuse is.
I mean, if you're gonna speak, then if you're gonna speak, you need to come to the camera, please. Up to the mic.
I would say the issue is the difference between, you can call it an excuse, if there are legal reasons that it cannot be done. We have to set the example as local government for the businesses and residents of this region. We follow the law. We follow the law in each one of our municipalities. Until we meet that ordinance, we don't open. It's in the hands of the engineers. At this point, once we have satisfied the ordinances, the park will be opened immediately. But we do not violate the law. The stormwater ordinance for Ferguson Township.
With respect to, you complete that sentence. With respect to,
I mean, it's the entirety of the stormwater ordinance. There are a variety of issues there. It is a sensitive environmental issue, which is why multiple groups came out and protested not wanting the site to be built to begin with. At the very beginning, we are very conscious of the fact that it is an environmentally sensitive area, and so we will meet that. Part of the issue was that testing was originally done by a separate firm than the engineering firm that was actually working on the project as a whole, which is different from the crew that I now have, because none of the original engineers even exist on this project, that is doing the land development plan, the MAP for this as we speak. So we had to retest everything that was out there. That meant doing water infiltration testing, soil testing to make sure that the chemicals were right. The original tests, we were not right. We were in violation of the ordinance as it stood. So we have been working with the engineers. We are on the third submission. The Ferguson Township engineer has had that for approximately 2 weeks now, and we hope to have a response. I hope to have had it last week, but I hope to get that this week and see where we stand. But as a government entity, I will not open a facility that does not fully comply with the law when I expect other people to follow the regulations that we put in place.
Ferguson Township stormwater.
What? Yes,
Ferguson
because the park sits within Ferguson Township, it is their stormwater ordinance
Yeah, they're part
that
of
dictates what
167.
happens.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, just, and being on the authority as well. In terms of Whitehall Road, we're so close. But it's kind of up to Ferguson Township. It's not something COG can push through. It's something that Ferguson Township has to approve and COG has to facilitate and wait on. In terms of,
Protest out in front of Ferguson Township.
in terms of, you gonna bring hot dogs?
Yeah, I'll bring hot dogs.
Are these two organizations just missing each other? Are they ever coming close?
I don't wanna comment on one of our other municipalities.
That's a
There-
learning.
It's, yeah, it's a tough situation. In terms of Hess Fields, we have, done the engineering work for the new facility. And we've also been discussing, bringing in one of these, trailers that are portable facilities. And that'll be relatively inexpensive, and there's money in the budget, and I believe we're gonna do that sometime this summer, to do that. So,
It's already this summer.
yeah, yeah,
So
well,
why hasn't
that's
this
my
been done?
understanding, it's gonna be done this summer. I don't know the schedule, but the idea would be, we can get that in there, take a look at it, see what kind of amenities it's offering, and consider that as a temporary solution until we can do and I'm fully in favor of doing it wholeheartedly, not half-assed, but getting sewer in there and getting a proper facility in there. I'm less worried about concessions and place for the umpires to change their clothes or whatever. But I do think we need to have a bathroom facility, restroom facility out there. And particularly for young women that are playing out there. I mean, boys are boys, but we need to, so we're working on that. I don't think it's gonna be done this year. Hey, the whole world is my urinal.
You're saving the water authority.
Oh, don't do that again.
So
Not off the backboard.
things are moving forward, maybe not as fast as we would like.
I'm sure to list all these excuses. I've heard that same song and dance for 3 years now. It's getting old. It's getting old. It's $10 million worth of parks we can't use. Now you talk about boondoggles. Let's get it done with. We could have, that's beautiful field with lights, you could use it. And I know they can't sign off of it, but there's gotta be ways to do this. There's no doubt about it. I mean, you're talking about $10 million worth of taxpayers' money, and we're still paying on it. So my point is, it's frustrating. I know this, and well, we gotta wait for this, we gotta wait for that. Let's just find some way to move forward, get something done. Okay.
I think you ought to go to the next Ferguson Township meeting. They have short ones.
Well, Thursday, what's that?
I don't know. Okay, thanks for your comments, Bud.
Thanks, Bud.
Okay,
See you, bud. Bud!
so, new agenda items. The township agenda for the meeting has to be posted within 24 hours. We can make exceptions for very minimal items, for emergency items, and for items that are just for discussion, but not for a vote. Does anybody have anything you want to add to the agenda? No. Okay, great, thank you. Next up is Springfield Commons on-street parking request.
Springfield Commons Homeowners Association is requesting an amendment to township regulations to permit on-street parking along the east side of Deering Drive. Per the subdivision and land development ordinance, on-street parking can be permitted on one side of a street with a cartway width of 24 feet. Deering Drive meets this width requirement, but the Springfield Commons plan prohibited parking on both sides of Deering Drive. Representatives of the Springfield Commons HOA are present here this evening to provide an overview of their request and the efforts that they made to evaluate and collect feedback from residents. And if the board is interested in considering the request, an amendment to Chapter 8-1.31 will need to be prepared and a public hearing scheduled. And Lee, you want to step to the mic and introduce yourself, and I'll go ahead and start presenting your slideshow here. You're welcome. Yes.
Perfect. Thank you very much. This presentation is a summary of what was sent to Chairman Lord along with the rest of the members of the Board of Supervisors, which included not only a background and summary on what the situation was, but included the narrative that was given to all homeowners prior to our vote and the results in which were delineated from that discussion. Again, I'm going to try to provide you with some context as to what went on. Thank you. About 2 years ago, the neighborhood convened a working group on parking. We determined that there were issues on Deering, Brisbane, and Homestead, and we wanted to start to be able to try to resolve those matters. The group was formed in March of 2023, and we ended up narrowing the focus. We felt that the homestead issues was pertaining to a single family who has such since moved and has gone away with the problem. So we're monitoring that situation. We began extensive conversations focusing on Deering and others on Brisbane. We have not resolved the Brisbane matter, but tonight's presentation is focused strictly on Deering Drive. Thank you. So we started the first 6 months. We put together a working group. This working group represents one member from each of the streets in our neighborhood, with the exception of Sophie. That's because we had no volunteer from Sophie who wanted to work on the working group. But everybody else was represented. So we spent about 6 months taking anecdotal information, but we also did a survey of the entire neighborhood, and we found some deficiencies in the signage, which the township has corrected. And we thank you for doing that, having that corrected. We also found that many people don't know what the signs mean. There's an education issue. So we started to consult with township authorities. At that time, the interim township, Peter Marshall, was here, and he provided us some context, some information that we used. And so we really put all that together in trying to understand what's the gist of the problem, because we really didn't quite understand it, and we didn't know whether or not it was even permissible to consider parking along Deering, street lengths, emergency vehicles, and all that. So really, we put together a framework during that first 6 months. Thank you. And then as we went through the end of the second year, we started to have further conversations, updates at regular board meetings, and we convened a neighborhood session in January 2025 to get some feedback as to what's the problem, what is conceived. I'll tell you the truth. The number one problem that we found was lack of education. People didn't know where you could park in the neighborhood. People were told as they moved in, you can park here, specifically on Deering Drive. Many people were told by real estate agents, oh, you can park there, when clearly the signage prohibited. So we felt that we really need to take another step in understanding, help educating the entire community on what we need to do. They don't know the ordinances. They're not sure, what do I do around, how far do I park from a fire hydrant or from a curb of an intersection? There's some basic fundamental education that we're going to have to address following, but we wanted to get through this particular session. So we sent out a couple of emails with the same information which was provided to the Board of Supervisors in early 2025, and then we conducted a survey using Election Buddy, which would give us some anonymity to the survey, but also be able to collect it. Thank you. And then the survey options that we came to based upon the input that we got from the customers or from the residents, we started out with option A, which was do nothing, leave the parking alone. And as you can see, to give you a little bit of the legend, green is where parking is permitted, red is where parking is not. Then we came up with option B. Option B was to permit parking on the northbound east side. The next option, option C, was to permit parking on the other side. But again, we only could park on one side. So we parked on one or the other. And then we also provided a fourth option was, I really don't care. And we felt that there were going to be people who didn't feel that they had a vested interest in the decision, but we wanted to be able to make sure everybody had a chance to bring the vote back. We were extremely enthusiastic. We received 39 out of 64 votes. And as you break it down by street, you can see that our percentages of the number of residents that voted range between 55 and 75. And when you look at it, it was basically an average of around 62%. And we were very enthusiastic that we had a survey which we felt had that type of range, and actually it gave us a great deal of validity. Based upon information that we received from the township, we really wanted to focus on those residents who were on Deering Drive. What do they want? And we found that as a result of the survey, every resident that participated, which turned out to be 5 of 9, of which 2 were rental homes, which probably would never vote, so the remaining was that every one of them wanted parking on one side or another of the street. And we felt that was a very important piece. We also acknowledge that there are two homes, one is on Homestead, one is on Emma, which abuts Deering, which while they had addresses that were on a different location, they could have an impact. But even if we added those, make the assumption that they would have said no, and we don't know the answer because of, trying to keep it somewhat blinded. Even if they said yes, it still would not have changed the Deering input because there's still only been two of a better part of 7 people that voted in terms of favor. So very much the Deering residents want parking on this street. So then we broke down A, B, C, and D. It came out to be about a third don't change the parking, a third park on the downhill side, 18% park on the uphill side, and 15% no preference. So then we looked at it and we said, okay, this is the total distribution. What happens if we look at the distribution as it pertains to parking and where to park? 49%, almost 50% of the residents that voted for some form of parking on Deering Drive. We got the 33 and the 18, they maintained the same. So then the question came down to the working group. If you have 49%, which side? And we found that 2/3 voted for the east side, the northbound side, as opposed to the opposite side of the street. Option B versus option C. So we reached a conclusion based upon this information that we gathered through the individual conversations that we have had with residents, as well as the group neighborhood meeting that we had, that we were going to recommend that option B. Next slide, please. So we recommended to the Springfield Commons Board that option B be selected, that it does in fact align with the engineering studies. It's 24 feet. It matches other traffic patterns within the neighborhood, and it also provides a couple of very important factors. One of which is that it's on the same side as our community center. Right now, there's only 2 parking places available near our community center, and they're at the bottom where there's a visitor only. Those are the only 2 spots. If you don't get around the community center, there's no other parking. And it seems that there needs to be some way for when events are held there that there is some form of parking. So it addresses that, and we had very strong community support from the residents on Deering. So okay, thank you. So our next steps are that based upon the recommendations that we received from the township now or in the near future, we will then conduct a campaign to educate people what to do, how to do it, what's the sign mean, and everyone keeps talking about, well, that sign's backwards. Well, poor Mark, we've gone back to the township more than one time saying, is this sign placed right? Yes, it's placed right. This has happened more times. So it's not that the signs aren't right, it's people don't understand the signs. We need to be able to make this information available. Our homepage is open to a public domain. Everything else is behind a login, but we're going to put this on the homepage so when residents and visitors come, they're going to have some idea as to what the parking is. And we would start this shortly after a favorable decision as to parking on Deering. If there's not a favorable decision and that's what we decide on, then that's where it needs to stop at. So, with that, I want to thank the volunteers. This group worked for 2 years. There were some starts and stops as we moved from township manager, but also in our office. All of us are volunteers, and we're trying to do it in amongst everything else. We appreciate Mark's efforts. We appreciate Peter's efforts. They got more questions than I imagined. I imagine when one of us showed up at the door, they were looking to go out the back door. So I wouldn't blame them either. But more importantly, I thank you for the consideration and really appreciate you taking the time out, putting us on the agenda, and letting us talk about what we feel the Springfield Commons neighborhood would like to have done.
Done it yet? Did you introduce yourself at the beginning?
Yes, I'm Fred Maroney. I'm a resident.
I didn't know if
I'm
you
a
had said your name.
resident.
Thank you.
I live on Reuben. As soon as you pull into the neighborhood, I'm the very first house on the left-hand side.
Thank you.
Let me ask you a question. Today, we received a copy regarding a 4-way stop at the corner of...
Homestead and Deering.
Is that discussion any part of your discussion?
Well,
Or
actually, that came out of, I'm glad you brought that up because I actually missed that. That discussion came out of the neighborhood event that took place in January 2025.
Okay.
And we actually brought that to the township that we were curious about putting a 4-way stop where there's currently a 2-way stop. The answer that we got was a four-way stop is not a means by which, because you're coming downhill. A four-way stop is not intended to be a speed modification type of introduction. Now, there's not a lot of heavy traffic there, but we have actually talked to the township about the potential of putting a four-way, and the answer was no. That is not part of the discussion that we're having.
Is there any crash data on that corner?
I don't know of any accidents there, and you'd have to do a traffic study to truly understand whether or not there's any sight distance issues, but I doubt that there are in this case.
I haven't heard of any either, so
Yeah.
curious about that. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Question for Mike. Didn't we run into the same four-way stop issue up in Kaywood? Is it the same basic principle as this one up here?
Yeah, we can't put up a four-way stop to control speed or to slow traffic or even to just provide a safer intersection. There are requirements that have to be met, so traffic study, engineering recommendation, things of that nature, and following PennDOT requirements.
Would a four-way stop affect any of that parking on any side of Deering? No. Totally unrelated?
Totally different.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I understand. You come down the hill, there's a tendency, it may be faster than going up the hill, just nature. But this doesn't affect the parking. This is totally a separate matter. And if this is something that the township would like to take up and to evaluate, but I would love to see the data that tells us that it's a problem other than an opinion. And right now, I think that's what we're dealing with is an opinion.
Torrey and Homestead, where the community center is?
No,
Where is that?
no, the community center is at the bottom of Deering as you move into going toward Reuben.
Well, okay, no, okay. Good enough, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anybody here, the residents of Homestead, want to? I live on Deering. Well, let's get the alternative point of view, and then we can open it up further, please. So, a resident of Homestead, yes, please.
I live on Homestead.
Please.
I think the four-way stop sign would be very helpful, because if there is parking on Deering on the community side, you cannot see anybody coming up the road. You can see somebody coming down the road, but not up the road if there's parking on that side. So it presents a potential for an accident. There may not have been one yet, but it does present the potential for that, because if there is full-time parking on the going down side, the community center side of Deering, when you pull in and you're on Homestead and you want to cross that intersection, you can't see what's coming up the street. So, Christine Coleman and I live on Homestead Lane.
Yes, please.
Rob Warner, 421 Homestead Lane. I disagree with that. Until you have an engineering study about a four-way stop, it's a different issue. And there's nothing natural. I don't know anything about that intersection that is different than any other intersection that has a two-way stop. So I hate to see this parking decision latched to some stop sign issue that requires engineering and everything else. I just don't see the problem.
Have on Homestead, 459, 465, 71,
421.
421, okay. You're on the other side, okay.
Yeah, on the other side
Okay.
of Deering, on the east side of Deering.
Okay.
Going that way, towards Torrey. Okay.
Okay.
I'm just, we have honest disagreement. I just don't see it.
We have a resident from Deering that also would like to speak.
Please.
Hello, my name is Leslie Asbury, and I live at 130 Deering Drive in one of the carriage townhouses, the second one from the intersection coming down from across from Homestead coming down Deering. I've been there for 7 years, and when the day that I moved in, then the secretary of the board of Springfield Commons came to my door and informed me that parking was allowed on that side of the street, and I thought, well, that's great, that's right in front of my house. only to find out that 2 years ago, when my daughter came for dinner and to watch a movie and parked in front of my townhouse, that evening she went out to find that she had a $40 ticket on her car. So when I appealed it, the State College Police ticketed it, and that's when I found out, according to State College, that there was no parking whatsoever on Deering. So fortunately, because the signage was not real clear, and I had been told by the real estate people and one of the board members of Springfield Commons that parking was permitted on that side, they exonerated it, so the $40 fine was eliminated. However, it didn't solve my problem that no one could park in front of my house. So I was the one that kind of initiated this, that became a study with the Springfield Commons board. I unfortunately live in one of the townhouse carriage houses. And that's all that are on the lower part of Deering, are nothing but carriage houses and townhouses. And because of the design, we have no driveways. So when someone comes to my house to have lunch, or I have dinner guests, they can't park in front of my house and come to my front door. They either have to try to find a parking place up on Homestead, which wasn't always easy considering all the cars that were parked there, or they had to drive down Deering, turn into the community center driveway, and come all the way back up the drive and park in front of my garage doors, which meant I had to open my garage doors and have my guests coming through my garage to come to dinner. And even though I consider my garage neat and tidy, I don't think it's really appropriate. And then it's a full set of stairs up to my main house, and the first thing they see at the top of the stairs is the toilet in my half bath. So that is not the best way to have guests coming to your house. And quite frankly, I don't think anyone here on the board or even sitting in this room would want to have their dinner guests or lunch guests or friends coming through their garage and coming up a full flight of stairs. Now I have two couples that are really dear friends of mine that come to dinner, and I'll be 80 on my next birthday, and they're into their 80s, and now one of each of the two couples are using walkers. So now I can no longer have them come to dinner, because to have them walk from Homestead is not ideal, and they can't walk up the stairs to come into my house. So that to me is a very important factor, to be able to have parking for someone to come to my home and park in front of my house, where all of you, I'm sure, and everyone in this room have a driveway that people can pull into and go to the front door. Secondly, if I've done a big shopping, like at Sam's Club or the grocery store, and the back of my Nissan Rogue is packed, if I park in my garage, then I have to drag everything up a full flight of stairs, and right now I have a back injury. I happened to fall out of my bed 2 months ago. At any rate, I park out on Deering, and it takes me a bit to unload. At least I only have to walk up 3 steps, and then to bring the things in and get them in the fridge and the freezer. So my car is probably parked illegally on Deering for a good 15 to 20 minutes, because I now can't carry the things up the full flight of stairs, and I shouldn't have to anyway. I don't even want to talk about the fact that what I have to deal with on trash day, because I don't have a driveway, which is, again, it's not the board's problem, but Elaine Williams at the corner, and I have to drag our carts all the way down to the community center, out to the sidewalk, and then haul them all the way up the hill to the grass to get our trash picked up. So that's a whole other issue. So that's bad enough, but I certainly would like to be able to have guests and my daughter, if she comes, park out in front of my townhouse. And as Fred mentioned, there are only 2 places for parking. I no longer try to do anything with the community center. It's a beautiful facility, gorgeous living room area, fireplace, formal dining room, just lovely. But there's no place to park. And the 2 spaces that Fred mentioned down below, many times, many evenings when I've walked down late to get my mail, there's somebody parked in one of the residents is parked in one of those spaces because they drive down from up above to use the gym. And the access to the gym is right there off the sidewalk. So to invite people to come where they can't park on Deering, and there's only 1 parking place, what is the point of my having a gathering? Unless I can fit them all in my house, but then where do they park? They still can't park. So I really live at a disadvantage, as do those of us on Deering, and out of 50+ residences, we're the only ones that don't have a driveway and have to deal with this. So I would be very grateful. It would be my best 80th birthday present if you would approve to have parking on that side of Deering Drive for those of us that live there in townhouses that have no driveways. Thank you for your time. Anything I can answer?
Put the slide on with respect to the parking, all, whatever side, east and west side are doing, and show us what that looks like.
Okay.
I do believe it, the parking was permitted on the side by the community center.
What,
You
what,
could park
early,
4
early
cars out
slides.
there.
I gotta find the mouse there.
Okay.
Let me get the PowerPoint started and then let's get to that slide. Okay, so.
It's gonna be about halfway. There we go.
Yeah.
If you'll go up one more, please. Yep. Okay, this is how it stands right now. This is Deering going up toward the mountain, which is southbound. So going this way, got Emma Court over here. Homestead, parking is permitted along the perimeter of Homestead. There is no parking. The blue is not Dallas Cowboys, that's where the clubhouse is at, the Star. Okay? So you have no parking here. What Leslie is referring to is, this is where she lives, right here. There is no parking there, there is no parking there, and so the only parking there is, you have setback here because of the intersection right on there. You also have a fire hydrant, so you're actually back probably closer to here where you have legal parking at. So this is as it is today. Can we go to the next slide, please?
And no parking on Homestead either.
What's that?
Parking on Homestead?
Yeah.
Is it-
I'm
is
sorry, I
there
didn't hear the first
Is
part.
there parking on Homestead?
Yes, there's parking on Homestead, yes. Okay, so now what's yellow is actually the proposed parking. So what you would have is you would add coming down on the, going down the hill, which is north, east side of the road, parking along here, you're coming up to an intersection here, there's a driveway right here. Here, actually in front of Leslie's house, there would be parking all the way through. There is a driveway right here, and now you may be able to fit one car in this area, but you're also getting close to the intersection. So you got your setback on the intersection. So we estimated that you'd be able to park about 6 cars along that street,
For all that yellow stretch.
along that yellow stretch. So if we go to the next one, please. Differently then, all we've done is flipped it from one side to another. And so it was just this side here. And for whatever reason, the residents that voted, 2/3 of the residents that voted to put it on the other side. That's just, that was just their preference.
How many parking spaces on that option, Fred?
About the same. You know, but the only thing you have differently, here you have you have one driveway here, which is actually you drive, to get to these are both duplex, to get to them, you drive in this one and you come along back here. Here you have you have a couple of driveways that service here and here. So you're actually gonna be cut by one set of driveways, which is gonna be about 1 car less.
There's a cul-de-sac shown there too, off of, if you see Deering and Reuben, to the left.
You have down here, you got Reuben right here, the cul-de-sac sits over here at Sophie Court.
Okay.
And so at Sophie Court, there is some parking, but when you start factoring in the various driveways and fire hydrants, and then you,
The advisability of having parking on one side or the other side, and we'll be back at this.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, everybody.
I got a question, comment.
Yeah.
So, somebody could call in and get the parking requirement waived if they're having company, like Ms. Asbury, perhaps.
Absolutely,
If she was expecting guests, she could, get temporary, permission to, have cars parked directly in front of her house.
Whether or not she would do that to park her car out front to unload groceries or what have you.
That's minor. You should put on your four-way flashers when you're unloading, and it'll be pretty obvious.
But I will say, I know I've done it myself on Reuben, and the township has been very good in letting, in addressing that. So that is not a problem. I don't want everything to make that.
I just suggest any residents that do have an issue with not being able to park and have guests and there's no place for them to
But that's part of the education
contact the
process.
township.
They're like, we don't know what to do, okay?
Yeah.
I mean, the sign, the parking sign with arrows on it, both ways and one way, people have no idea what that means, I'm sorry, they don't know.
The other thing, and to Nigel's point, one thing to keep in mind, if we have no parking signs out there and there's an issue, the police can enforce it.
Yeah.
We take them down and there's an issue, we can't enforce it. So, for example, let's say we put parking on Deering, and all of a sudden somebody says, you know, I can park there and I can take my walk up into the mountain, and there's a whole bunch of cars parked there, she can't get into her house, and you guys start calling the police, guess what? Can't do anything about it.
Yeah,
So that's the other side of the coin, you have to
Absolutely.
understand that, you know, and we don't have a meter maid, okay? We don't have somebody walk around doing tickets. The only time there are tickets is if somebody complains, for the most part. Yeah, once in a while you'll get a patrol car, but for the most part, it's when somebody calls in. I got a no parking sign right in front of my house. My wife has a big family, and when they come, they are parking along the streets, and I've never had an issue. If the neighbors come and say, hey, you're blocking me, I have to move it, we just work as neighbors, and we've never had a problem.
Well, this was definitely talked about, but you're right, there's always two sides to it. This was debated.
Okay, well, let's move on. We'll gather more information. I think that's the important thing.
Hey, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would like to move to approve the closure of West Main Street from the Diamond to Wagner Street from Main Street to West Pine Street from Wagner Street to Church Street, and Church Street from Pine Street to the Diamond for the Glow Ride event on August 30th from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m.
The folks at Bike Roost have changed their plans.
Oh,
This is
shucks.
no
I
longer
was
relevant.
trying to speed things up.
So item B and C are off the agenda.
Oh, gosh, darn it.
Hey, let's save this a minute.
Gone. Let's save more minutes. I thought I was gonna get ahead.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is the Lingle Subdivision South Plan and the Harris Township official map.
Thank you. So in 2023, the Harris Township Board of Supervisors adopted an official map identifying long-term public infrastructure goals, including future park expansions, trail connections, and roadway improvements. The official map serves as a planning tool and public notice of areas the township may seek to acquire for public purposes. So staff have received the Lingle Subdivision South Plan, proposing the subdivision of property located at 1551 Linden Hall Road into 4 residential lots and 2 agricultural lots. The Harris Township official map identifies 2 proposed public facilities that affect portions of this property, and that is the expansion of Kaywood Park on what we will show you the plan, proposed Lot 3, and then the proposed shared use path connecting Earlestown Road to Linden Hall Road. This agenda item is intended to update the board on the subdivision plan and to review the implications of the official map designation. So this is under section 402 of the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code. When a development proposal affects property designated for public use on an official map, the municipality has up to 1 year from the date of plan submission to initiate proceedings to acquire that land. And that is through negotiation, eminent domain. We'll go through that in the presentation that I have. This designation does not constitute a taking, but it does formalize township's interest in the land and provides notice to the property owner of that potential future acquisition. So our recommendation is that the board discuss whether and how to pursue acquisition or coordination with the applicant to ensure consistency with the township's long-term goals. So let me get my presentation up. We'll go through a little bit of history here.
Change the side of the sun coming out.
All right. Can everyone at home see my presentation? Hoping so. All right. Yell if you can't. All right. So tonight we are going to introduce the Lingle Subdivision Plan, the relevance of this plan to your official map, implications and your options as the Board of Supervisors, and then ideally, staff, we would like to seek some policy direction from you all on how to proceed with this. So as the agenda language included, the official map, it's a planning tool, it's authorized under the MPC, it's section 401 and 402. It identifies future public streets, trails, parks, stormwater facilities, and open space. The key here is all for public use. It provides legal notice of that interest for specific properties in the township through this process. So why does this matter? It signals long-term goals for public infrastructure, coordinates development with future public facilities. It preserves the opportunity for public acquisition and provides 1-year window to initiate acquisition if property is affected by development. So acquisition, as I said in the agenda, it's a form of negotiation or eminent domain. This is not an automatic taking of anyone's property in the municipality, and you cannot restrict development by default with this designation on your map. Along that same coin, you are not obligated to acquire that land. This is a discretionary tool, so it is up to the Board of Supervisors if you would like to proceed with any sort of acquisition. If you do not act within that 1-year window, the landowner can proceed with their development proposal. Okay. I'm not moving forward anymore. All right. So up on the board, don't worry, we will zoom in, is the official map. It was adopted in February of 23. It includes the area we'll be looking at tonight, which is in that red circled. The Kaywood Park expansion and the future shared use path between Earlestown Road and Linden Hall Road. So that's number 13 and 15 on the official map that I've highlighted on the bottom left corner. But we're going to zoom in so you can see this a little bit better. Number 15 and number 13 on this map is the subject of tonight's discussion. You will see that connectivity of 13 and then the expansion of Kaywood Park with 15 on your map. So the plan that is in front of staff today, this is the Lingle Subdivision South plan. It's located at 1551 Linden Hall Road. It is currently zoned as agriculture, and the current use is farming and open space. They're proposing 4 residential lots and 2 ag lots with their proposed subdivision plan that is being reviewed. So again, back to the area in question. Don't worry, I did a little bit of art for you. So the yellow portion is that expansion of Kaywood in this instance, and then that dotted red line on the left side, that is that connectivity between Earlestown Road and Linden Hall Road, that shared use facility. So essentially what the MPC says, you have 1 year from the plan submission to act. Action equals initiating acquisition. Acquisition can be done in fee simple ownership, can be done in easement, so just to gain access. Again, there's no immediate taking or obligation to acquire these facilities. As a board, you can decide you don't want to follow through with these designations as listed on the official map. Ideally, this just encourages coordination with the landowner, the developer, and the township on these public facilities. So let's see. Key considerations for you all. Does the township want to pursue acquisition? If so, what mechanisms? There's negotiation, there's purchase, there is only easement. It doesn't have to be fee simple. And are modifications to the plan desirable to preserve future public facilities? So we will say that the applicant is interested in working with the township. They really don't. Yep. They really don't want their plan locked up for a year or so. So they are willing to work with us. We have 2 plan iterations that we'll show you tonight. One of them is the applicant is proposing 9.9 acres for that Kaywood expansion that you'd see in the yellow. And then the other one, and or, because it truly is up to the board if you want to do both, if you want to do one, it is truly up to you. The other iteration is that red dotted line. There is a 20-foot wide park access designated on their subdivision plan as an option as well.
20-foot edge to edge from the property line going in.
Yeah, width. Yep. So I'll show you these plans so you can look at them as well. Okay.
I went to bed at midnight, I'm tired.
All right. So the first iteration that we saw was this one. And that includes this 9.9 acres proposed park addition to expand Kaywood. As well as you can see, there's a narrow, that's that 20-foot easement access for this park land back here.
If that weren't taken, would that parkland be added to lot 3?
In the second iteration, if I can get my, no, can't get this thing to go away. There it is.
It's 4 residential and 2 agricultural.
Yep,
Okay.
for residential, 2 ag. So this is the second iteration provided by the applicant's engineers, which includes just the proposed 20-foot park access
Okay,
that you would see along here. And then this, what was proposed as that addition for Kaywood Park, would be included with the lot 3.
What's the total acreage on that piece then?
On lot 3,
Yeah,
that's 30.4.
goes to the road all the way to the top, okay.
Hmm.
So is the addition to Kaywood, was that required as part of the development, or they just offered to us?
No, so this particular park addition was just identified on the official map because they're not doing a residential development that has 5 or more lots. They don't have to provide parkland. It's only being talked about because of it being on the official map.
And since it's adjacent to the Kaywood Park now, we've got parking there.
A little bit.
But-
Yeah.
As opposed to having parking and having to gain an easement through somebody's property and get to it.
Right. I think the easement was primarily for pedestrian and bicycle.
Yeah.
So folks can get from Linden Hall Road up and vice versa.
Yeah. We talked about the same interesting concept, getting a path from Willowbrook to Kaywood into that area, so we would have ended up picking two neighborhoods going to Oak Hall Park. That was a dream we had many years ago. That'd be a nice connection too. But this is better than nothing. Yeah.
So, thoughts, Frank?
Yeah, question. Our new ag zoning, how does this fit in? Does that meet the open space requirements? And then my other question is that if I'm understanding if we approve this, it goes permanently on there, they can't subdivide any of those lots.
Not necessarily.
Well, that would be my question.
They have to, as far as I understand it, they would meet our ag ordinance and our conservation design regulations. Some of these lots are being created or proposed under the exempt lots provision. And like that 30-acre lot would just be an agricultural lot because it's over 20 acres in size. That one could be further subdivided, I would think.
I thought once they did this, you always had to meet the open space requirement.
Only if it's under a certain size. So we aren't prohibiting somebody from carving up a farm into smaller farms, but farms that are still larger than 20 acres, which that lot 3 would be.
By the time you look at setbacks on 3, you don't have a lot of room to do anything coming up the hill. That land is got a nice grade going up to it.
And Frank, back to your question, the north side of the road, which they're not subdividing as part of this, that would be a residual lot. That lot would have to meet, most of their exempt lot acreage is being used up on the south side, so that lot, anytime they subdivide it, would have to provide open space and have those restrictions as you noted. But these exempt lots would be prohibited from further subdivision.
Then my next question, if we take that parkland for Kaywood, what are we gonna do with it? You know, if we're gonna say we're gonna take it, we better have a plan for it, and not just take it and let it sit there and, what's that? No, I mean, seriously, we should have some kind of a plan of what we're gonna do with it. You know, I mean, if we're gonna take it or buy it or whatever, we should probably have something we wanna do with it before we do that.
What's the total acreage of Kaywood Park now?
It's about 9 acres, and I did bring this potential addition up to the Parks Committee at their meeting back in June, and I think it might be worth discussing it with them one more time. But I think in general, Kaywood Park, we just got an addition of land out there from the Kaywood North subdivision. We're still trying to figure out what to program that extra acreage with. I don't know that the committee necessarily felt as strongly about a lot of additional parkland as much as they did the need for connectivity. So the idea of having this be able to be connected down to Linden Hall Road, the idea of it being able to be connected over to Rocky Ridge. There are folks over there that might be able to walk across, from Rocky Ridge into this development, send their kids over there. I think that connectivity was something they really wanted to see. The additional land, I think that'd be something whether or not if they really feel the need to expand the park. That's wooded right now as well. It's pretty heavily wooded, so I don't know what we would do with it other than leave it as woodland if we took it.
Could we take that piece and allow it to be farmed? The parkland piece?
That little piece there?
Well, it's connected to 3, so it's really just a continuation of whatever they plant.
Yeah, you're saying if we took the 9 acres, let them continue to farm it?
Yeah.
Well, I suppose you could, but I don't know at that point what the additional acreage would be for.
Looking down the future.
How much would that land cost us?
That's a good question. I don't know what the fair market value is. That would be something you'd have to consider, and then where we would, have the funding come from to pay for it.
And if we just went for the easement, we'd still end up having to pay something for that, or easement or acquisition, one of the two.
It would be far less than 9 acres of additional parkland, though, yes.
Does that easement fit within the setback requirement for that piece of property? Put the slide back on with the setback.
We haven't discussed whether or not it would be an easement or fee simple ownership. I think that would be one of the questions for the board. Do you want to have that as something that the township owns outright, or do you want to have it where it's an easement over property where we are allowed to have a path?
Well, what's the width of the side yard setback? 15 feet?
I'll look to.
It depends on the size of the lot.
Well, number 3.
I see 100-foot side
Yeah, I'd say that's probably 100 feet for that one.
100 foot setback?
On lot 3 would be a 100-foot side setback. On the,
50.
it'd be
So we could well put a path in there and not intrude too
If it
much.
was an easement, right, it would not really impact their.
I think that would be let's just make sure, if we wanna put a path through there, that's all we need. Cause unless we have some real good idea what to do with that land, I think it'd be my take.
One thing I'd say. This plan here, this is the one that they provided to us that just shows the easement or the, acquisition of land running down the west side there for us to have a pathway. I'd also say that it would be desirable to have a pathway going across to the east there. Because if you look at the official map, there's a connection that comes in from Rocky Ridge that showed it coming into that future park. That way we could have a trail coming over, hopefully through the open space at Rocky Ridge if that owner is willing to. It kind of opens up the eastern part of that development as well as Aspen Heights.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, just have so we can get to the park. And like I said, unless we have some special need for that land, or we wanna do something, we could put an ice cream stand there or something.
Ferris wheel.
Ferris wheel, we could put a Ferris wheel.
Tracy, your thoughts?
Merry-go-round?
I'd tell you, for myself.
Right now, I like the idea of the easement. I agree with
Yeah.
what to do with the land. I wouldn't know what to do with the land.
Does Rocky Ridge abut the top of all those lots?
It's right where the,
Okay, that's
right where the cursor is. Yeah.
Sawtooth kind of design,
Yep.
that's all Rocky Ridge.
It is.
And the continuation, the expected continuation of the Rocky Ridge top road, we have an idea where that might be?
Comes pretty close to that.
It's close.
Close. Yeah.
Because those lots were anticipated to be much larger lots than the current Rocky Ridge. As she kept coming around the top, I think she had some 4 and 5 acre lots laid out there, which may account for that sawtooth design.
Well, those were in concept. Those aren't tied to anything
Yeah.
concrete.
And we're not seeing a lot of building in Rocky Ridge
Sure.
anyhow, so.
Well, I'd say from my own point of view, I'm more interested in connectivity than acreage. And so getting the access down to Linden Hall Road, Earlestown to Linden Hall Road, I think is great. Getting access from the people in Rocky Ridge over to the park is great.
Yeah.
I don't think, I've been to that park, there's a lot of open space there. There's already, we want to put in another swing set or something like that, there's plenty of room. We don't need additional acreage. It's a good sledding hill.
And just for clarification here, to the left, the cul-de-sac, that's part of Kaywood North, correct?
Kaywood North Estate Lots.
What?
Kaywood North Estate Lots, that's the extension of Montclair Lane that's under construction now.
Oh, okay.
So where do we move on this? Kick it over to the planning commission, or
Well, I think
you
at
get
this,
some guidance here?
I think at this point, with you providing feedback that you would, generally like us to, it sounds like, move forward to try and at least get the connectivity resolved, I think it'd be appropriate for us to talk with the developer and their consultant from Pantera and just at least see what they might be willing to do, and then we can bring that back to you here, hopefully at a future meeting.
Okay, do we all feel good about that connectivity?
Yeah, I like the connectivity. I don't see the need for the more parkland.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think you got direction.
Absolutely, thank you.
All right, next up, Spencer subdivision waiver request.
At the June meeting, Tom Sauger, the developer of Hawk Ridge Lot 1 minor subdivision, asked the board to waive the requirement for material used for riparian buffer markers. At the conclusion of that discussion, Mr. Sauger asked the board to consider two waivers for a nearby subdivision that was also recently approved and developed by Mr. Sauger, the Spencer subdivision. The board told Mr. Sauger that this waiver request was more detailed than the Hawk Ridge request and that the board wasn't prepared to discuss it. Chairman Lord suggested that Mr. Sauger approach the board at the July meeting to determine if the board would consider his two requests for the Spencer subdivision plan. If the board was willing to consider the more extensive of the two requests, the reduction in number of riparian buffer markers, Mr. Sauger could then prepare a plan amendment that would provide detail about that request. We did hear from Mr. Sauger, I believe, did he contact you, Jenna, last week?
Yes.
At first, yeah, and we had some emails back and forth today about the issue. The staff's recommendation, it's a discussion item. The board has previously indicated that they do favor waiving the riparian buffer marker material requirement, but can discuss if they would consider at a future meeting a waiver of the number and or location of riparian buffer markers once more detailed information is provided to staff for review.
Good evening, my name's Tom Sauger. I did submit a revised waiver request memo on Tuesday, and when Mark contacted me about being at the meeting this evening, I thought it was understood I was going to be here because you said you didn't have time to discuss the waiver request last month. So I don't know, Mark, did the board receive my updated?
I didn't realize this was different than what you had submitted previously. It looked the same.
Oh, okay.
I can pull that up here and share it.
Well, basically,
It was revised.
the revisions were, I read through the ordinance again in detail, and it's my opinion that the requirement here that you can read under section D4 is being misinterpreted in that riparian buffer signs, I believe it was the intent of the ordinance that these be required when construction was going to be done. Otherwise, just common sense says, why would you put signs up to warn people, and they only have to be up for 3 years, and then they can be taken down. So if you read what I said there, it says within 30 days of final plan approval, but in any case, prior to any site development or disturbance, the property encompassing the riparian buffer area shall be clearly delineated using fiberglass boundary markers, carcinite or equivalent, in parentheses, placed at a minimum of every 50 feet and extending a minimum of 3 feet above ground. Keywords in this sentence are prior to any site development or disturbance. We don't intend to do any disturbance or any site work as a part of the Spencer subdivision. Section D5 of the ordinance states The fiberglass boundary markers shall clearly indicate riparian protection area. And based on that statement, it's my own opinion that we can use fiberglass stakes rather than carcinite stakes, or equal. I asked last month on another property to be allowed to use steel stakes. That request was denied, but we can use fiberglass stakes. Item 3 there, section D7 of the ordinance states, riparian buffer area markers shall remain in place for a minimum of 3 years, the establishment period for new plantings. So this statement clearly indicates that the purpose of the riparian buffer area markers was to let people know that the area should not be disturbed. So I think based on this, I would like to ask the board that to not require me to install any riparian buffer signs. Again, the riparian buffer signs, which is shown on, can you bring up the plan that shows that, Mark, please? So this plan, this shows all the 85 signs. So the area to the left, you can't even walk through this area. It is so overgrown. So to put the stakes in, I would have to cut down some of the area. It's got to be surveyed in to locate those stake locations. And what good is it going to accomplish? Because we're not doing any earthwork on this particular lot. And to the east, that's all a wooded area. And here again, no one can go on my property. It's private property. And if they do, they're trespassing. But we're not doing any work, period. And I think the intent of the ordinance was when you are doing work, when you're moving earth, and you can get permits to move earth in a riparian buffer zone. But if you do that, then the idea is let the general public know, or whoever's going to be walking there, that they're not to disturb anything, and the signs point that out. So I'm just asking to get the board's general indication on this. I can submit a plan, but it's going to cost like $1,500 to submit the plan. And, you know, it's not that I can't afford to do that, but why go through that, and why waste any more of your time if you're not comfortable with granting the waiver request? So that's basically why I'm here.
Home on that piece of what?
It's over here.
Far left?
Yes. Yeah, this plan, as you know, has already been recorded. I have posted surety for the signs, but I didn't know that I could even ask a waiver request for the signage, which I did put in my waiver request, until I heard that, or I was here one evening when you granted a waiver request to another property owner, and then I just thought, well, you know, I've got a similar issue, and I thought that, you know, I'd just come before you and see what your general feeling is. If and when we ever do any development on this tract, yes, I will install the buffer signs in any area that's close to where construction is going to be, but I don't have any plans at this time, and probably won't in the future, to impact any of the riparian areas. So this, as I said, this whole area is overgrown with invasive species, and we do have a intermittent stream that runs down through this area, and we have wetlands. We've never had an issue with anything or anyone being on our property. Academy Street is to the left of the yellow stakes, and the invasive species grow right out to Academy Street, and that's why I said in my memo, if any of the supervisors or the staff would like to go up there with me and view that, I'd be more than happy to do that.
To the far right? Far left? Oh, okay, there, okay, okay.
The Spencer property is accessed by Academy Street, and there are 4 other residences
Okay.
to the south.
So you're to the side of
But it's
Academy,
a,
okay.
Academy Street is a private road, just stone road. It's maintained by the residents. And there's really no reason for anyone to go up there. And as I said, if I put the stakes in, we'll have to cut our way in, and no one's ever going to see them. And again, I believe when you read the ordinance, the purpose of the stakes was when you're going to do grading work or disturbance, the stakes are meant to tell people that this is a riparian area, so leave it alone and until the vegetation gets a chance to, become established.
What kind of note do you put on the plan with respect to futuristic opportunities? I mean, if we agree to this, do we then put on the plan that it can't be subdivided? Or if it's subdivided, it has to be with the stakes? I mean, what kind of ramifications are there to granting this?
The specific requirements we're talking about, as they relate to riparian buffer stakes, are placed on all plans that require a riparian buffer. So the things we're talking about, the width of the riparian buffer, the spacing of the riparian buffer markers, how long they have to be in place, when they have to be installed, those are all notes on approved plans, including this plan. If you decide to do something different, a new plan would have to be submitted. The ordinance requirements that are not being waived would still have to be represented on the plan through notes, but whatever you agree to change would also be formalized on the plan via notes.
When is the 3-year period activated?
It was
Now?
activated 30 days after this plan was recorded, which is what, March?
So if nothing happens in 3 years, the stakes can come down?
Yes.
So-
The intent of the 3-year period, it was not to, only in the case that construction was immediately
Yeah,
proposed.
okay.
The 3-year period was put into place so that anything that was proposed for planting or anything that would grow naturally would have that 3-year period to develop and take hold, so that at the end of the 3-year period, when the stakes could come down, the riparian buffer was well defined. So the intent was not to cordon it off from construction, because we've had plenty of subdivision plans that had riparian buffers that no construction took place for years and years afterwards.
Is the use of fiberglass as opposed to the carcinite consistent with our ordinance?
Yeah, I think there's similar materials. I don't think
Okay,
that's
okay.
necessarily
All
necessary.
Just one more. I seem to recall another place where we adjusted the distance between the signs, between the stakes.
There's been a few subdivisions. The most recent was the Akins subdivision that
Yeah.
you looked at a couple of months ago. In that particular case, the engineer for the developer, which is John Sepp from Pantera, who's zoomed into this meeting, Pantera met with the township engineer. They discussed the appropriate locations for riparian buffer signs at a reduced frequency and in not every 50 feet or not every 100 feet, just the ones that made sense to offer the reasonable amount of notification to the public or to anybody else who was on the property that this is where the riparian buffer boundaries were. That's the process that we always use. We would recommend that if you're considering altering the number and location of stakes, that same process be followed with this request.
Frank? Yeah, I remember a couple years back, we did a cow pasture.
Yeah.
And it went 100 and some, and we decided that cows can't read. And I think we let them go around the edges. So in the same vein, knowing that territory up there and how hard it is to get through, deer, bear, rabbits, squirrels, they can't read either. So I don't know why we would want to put a whole bunch up in there, but I think either just marking the entrances like we did on that cow pasture, just put a couple boom boom, and then you're good to go with it. I think we did that before, and it makes sense if the rabbits can't read, you know, they don't know what they're in a riparian buffer, and it's not a high traffic area. So I wouldn't be opposed to going ahead and getting a waiver, just put it where, okay, here's the entrance, you know, it's a riparian buffer area, put it there for the 3 years. Same thing we did with the cow pasture.
But we should consult with the township engineer to do that. Even with Aikens, there were somewhere between 20 and 30 signs that the township engineer agreed were probably good locations to put those signs. So if this is something that you want to pursue, our engineer Jerry can work with the developer to identify those
from
locations.
about here up, you're not gonna, oh, I'm sorry, anything from here down, you're not gonna get at.
Key points with those turns or circles.
Yeah, where you go into the property, you know, there's some places that are key spots that they could be put, you know, going up through all these every 50 feet's ridiculous because there's not gonna be anybody up there looking at them anyway.
So can I ask, I have a question. So what triggered the signs anyway for the riparian buffers? Was that simply because the property was subdivided?
Yes.
Okay, so if you've got a property that's subdivided, and as it is right now with you have no intention of developing this property, you put riparian buffers on there for 3 years, and then you want to develop the property, okay? Does that trigger again the riparian buffers or no?
The riparian buffer sign requirement will be triggered again if this developer or some other developer proposes either a subdivision or land development plan that triggers the riparian buffer regulations.
Again?
Yes.
So you triggered it once and you triggered it again. I mean, I guess I'm a little bit confused about why if somebody subdivides something, that it automatically triggers that if there's no development on the property. I'm a little confused about that.
Well, as I explained earlier, it's to allow the area that is being preserved as a riparian buffer to naturally vegetate so that the riparian buffer is well defined 3 years down the road.
Yep, totally get that, but if you're not touching it anyway, I don't know.
Well, this developer says he's not gonna touch it for years. Tom can sell that property next week, next month, or next year to somebody who wants to develop it immediately.
Which
So
will
that may
trigger
or
it
may
again.
not be a consideration for you.
But it will trigger it again.
Well, it will, but the requirement to have the signs installed, according to our ordinance, which is a law, was triggered back in March, and they're still not in there.
What's the slope of that property with respect to an on-site sewer stuff? What's the pitch of that property with respect to an on?
8 to 10% slope to the north, downhill.
But for on-site sewer, you need 25%, don't you?
What's that?
On-site sewer? What's the slope?
You can't put any on-site sewage on here. We've had both these lots tested by DEP and Mary Kay Lupton. We discussed that some time ago. There's no site on this entire 2 lots that's suitable for on-lot sewage under current criteria.
A portion of the property, though, is in the sewer service area. This 9-acre piece over here.
Well, the right side, you have.
Yeah, just clarifying, there is public sewer to part of that lot.
But it was.
Right over here, the Benjamin Heights piece is right here, and that is part of this lot that was all subdivided into one property.
That's not the topic before us.
Yeah.
Nigel, thoughts?
You know, I kind of, if the land's not accessible, really accessible to be used, and there's no earth gonna be moved, I don't see the point in putting up signs now, as long as they could be put up, they would be required to be put up later if there was any more activity proposed on the property.
I would just point out that development activity and activity on the property are not necessarily always the same, and maybe Mr. Songer doesn't intend to do anything with his land for the next couple of years, but as Todd pointed out, if it was sold to someone and they decided to go in there and clear cut it, there would be no signs letting them know that was supposed to be a protected riparian buffer, and that's the benefit of having the signs now, at least, you know, however many you decide you'd want to have on the property. But development and changes to the property don't always require a revision or review by the township.
Can't
So
they
just
put on a note on a plan? that if it's sold, the what-if situation?
I don't know if that would be.
We put all kinds of notes on
Wait
plans.
a minute here. If I sold the land tomorrow, the plan that's recorded, or it's gonna show the riparian buffer on the plan.
As it is now.
Yes.
Yeah.
All we're talking about is not having to put the signs up. We're not changing the riparian buffer or the intermittent stream or the wetlands. So anybody who buys this, they have to, you know, do their due diligence and check this out. I mean, I did go up, and this whole tract, even the Spencer lot, was totally covered with invasive species. And I'd encourage you to take a drive up there and look at the Spencer lot today. And we mowed that down. We worked with Dr. Spencer, and then he hired a landscaper to go in and plant the grass there, but he preserved all the trees. Over on our side, I could drive you up there if you'd like. I'd like to show you that land. I did the same thing. I mowed down the invasive species except for the intermittent stream and the natural wetlands, because I didn't want to get in there and do anything. Just leave it natural. And that's what we're going to do here. We're not doing any planting. And I really think you need to look at this part of the ordinance and consider rewriting that to clarify when riparian buffer signs are needed. I don't think just because you subdivide a property and you're not doing any work that riparian buffer signs are needed. I mean, what do they accomplish if on the plan is shown as a riparian buffer? It's like a setback line on a plan. I mean, that's the way you ought to think about that. And we show setback lines on all new lots that we create. They're shown on these two lots. But I really think that's one thing that you should consider looking at. And I know you do look at your ordinances from time to time to see how you might make them better. And I would encourage you to do that with this. But I have no problem sitting down with Todd and Mark and your engineer to talk about what the appropriate signage is, and maybe what Frank recommended, would be acceptable. All we're talking about here is changing one note on the plan, note 8, that talks about the riparian buffer signage.
Yeah,
That's it.
I'd like to suggest that we ask our township engineer to work with the developer to determine the number of signs that'll meet the purposes of our ordinance, but not be too onerous.
Yeah,
on
I appreciate that.
Is that?
That's fine. You want that as a motion or something?
Yeah, okay.
Well, can you note a motion or what you want?
No, I think just your consensus that you'd like to have us contact
Okay.
engineer and Tom.
Yeah,
Looking for as well.
I'll get in touch with you tomorrow, and we'll agree on a time we can get to. Or you can check, I'll tell you what you do, check with Jared Northridge, find out when his schedule allows for us.
He's harder to tack
Just
in.
send me a couple dates that'll work for you, and I'll try to make my schedule work
All right,
around
we're
yours.
gonna make this work.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank you.
Tom.
Appreciate your cooperation.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, Center Region COG 2026 Strategic Guide to Services and Investment Review.
So at the June 17th, 2025 meeting, the COG Executive Committee forwarded the 2026 COG Strategic Guide and Services and Investments, also known as the SIGSI, to the Center Region municipalities for review and comment. This includes elements of the former program plan and capital improvement plan. And a copy of this was provided to the board members in June following the executive committee's action. I did want to note that I've provided an updated comment guide at each of your place settings. I received some comments over the weekend as well as earlier today that I incorporated in here. So hopefully that will help you out as you move forward, and I will take notes as we go along to make sure that I can summarize everything to provide back to COG by the Friday deadline. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. It's great to see you again. I just have a couple additional notes from what Mark provided. As he mentioned, this does take the place of the old capital improvement plan and the program plan into one single document. If you have not yet taken the time to go through this, it's been reorganized in a way to mimic your code books, your local code books. So everything is done by budget code through here, which means if there are additions to the book, it does not disrupt everything else that comes after it. So if you had something in, say, section C51 for buildings and capital, that would be C51-1, C51-2, etc. And any updates, then just move that specific section, not the entire document. Additionally, we want to mention that your comments are intended to help guide the upcoming process. You are not making any full-time permanent decisions here. One of the differences we did this year was provide a municipal comment operating guidelines at the request of the Finance Committee. And I'm just going to read the section on intent. Municipal comments are intended to reflect a unified position or shared perspective of the governing body on SIGSI proposals. And these comments are not votes or formal approvals, but valuable feedback that helps shape program direction and resource prioritization. So you are not, if you support something moving forward, you are not saying that you are going to vote for it, just that you support the idea of that proposal. If there are comments that you want to make on anything, we would appreciate those, as they will help us refine these things as they move forward. One of the biggest changes that we want to note for everybody is that my staff will be responding to comments from every municipality on each proposal. You will not see anything that says noted returned to you. Everything will have an explanation to it if you provide a comment to the staff. So you will get a full response on anything that you say. That does not mean you are going to like the comments every single time. There are times that you are going to want to see a change that we simply cannot make. We will note that and say, this is why we cannot do the thing that you are asking for. Here's what we can do to mitigate any of the dangers that you think might come from the proposal as it is. But you will receive a response on your comments. That was one of the pieces of feedback that I heard last year through the budget process that was very concerning to people. And we have taken that feedback seriously and we'll incorporate that in. The other big change on feedback is that when we release the combined comment sheets, afterwards this will work along the lines of an Amazon review page, where you have a top positive comment and a top negative comment on anything. If 5 communities support an issue and 1 community does not support that issue, that one non-support will get equal billing with the top supporting comment for it. That way, if one community is seeing something that the other 5 are not, we are drawing attention to it so that everybody can think about it again and take that under advisement moving forward. Those are the only comments I have to make at this point. I'm happy to answer whatever questions I may. I have not seen the comments that were submitted thus far, so I cannot promise that I have feedback in detail from every agency director that I can provide you on these things. But as much as possible, I will answer, or I'm also joined by Kim and Walt from the code staff this evening.
I have one comment. This was really onerous to me to get through. I read it front to back. But yes, you have it set up like our ordinances, but our ordinances are just onerous as this was to get through. I can't tell you what project number 2, I know what project number 1 is, but project number 2, project number 3, project number 4, project number 5. I can't sit there and tell you what this area where the project number 1, project number 2. So, I mean, I would suggest to you, I mean, as a business standpoint, this was just way too much. I would like a list in the beginning with the COG rankings of these projects. So at least I understand what they are straight through. And when I look at them, I know what your priority is immediately. That would be very helpful to me. In addition, I would like to see the agency beside it, where it is in the agency, and then I would like each agency, because you've got, the operating and the capital and parks separated. Now I've got the whole agency in there, and I'm flipping back and forth trying to find out what they want first. So that was really, it was ridiculous to think of it that way, but it would be very helpful. Now, it would be very helpful for me to have the list and then the supporting documentation tab related right after it. But I do recognize that that's separating this quite a bit as far as ordinances. But it would be very helpful if I had a little bit of an introduction going into this rather than just plopping this into my face, because then I could have this in the back of my brain as I go through it.
Okay, I appreciate that. We provided the formats to elected officials ahead of time and asked for feedback on that at that time before we ever put this together.
I don't remember that. I wouldn't have known exactly what to tell you at that point anyway, because I've not really seen documents like this coming from you all or coming from this. So that's my feedback for next year, and it would be very helpful to have that list.
Okay.
Penny, would you go next? The complexity of in the past 14, 15 years of having two documents
Yes.
versus this. I like this. I think within a page or two of an activity, we can see what it's supposed to do, what's going to cost us. We've never had that in this kind of single document. I like that design.
So that is the goal. We'll take additional feedback. If there are ways we can continue to make it better, one of the things we pointed out through the whole process was this is the first iteration.
Yeah.
Every year, you iterate again, and you continue to make improvements until everybody feels satisfied.
Yeah, your first
And then
page
somebody
says
new gets elected, and we have to change
the
again.
priorities of a COG. Page one, those are the priorities of a COG. It's nice to see that.
Any good comments on anything specific in there?
They're included in here.
Okay. Nigel?
Yeah. To go along with Denny, after having to wade through other documents, I like this, the way that.
Oh, it was the Millbrook Marsh, and they're sending the leaders, they want to, here it is. Funds be approved for advanced training for supervisors and program coordinators in the areas of leadership, native habitat, blah, blah, blah. We hired people who aren't qualified to be leaders? Come on. We get resumes all over. So now we got to send them out and train them to be leaders? And we hired them that way? Come on. We got to get smarter than that. And like, for example, I saw a lot of stuff here not in that. I also, if you read my comments, there's one here, the construction program replaced 2 aging interactive whiteboards in line with a typical technology life cycle. Define aging. That is a relative term. Does it work? Is it broke? Can't you use it? Can you use it? If you can use it, keep using it. We don't have to have Cadillacs. We don't have to go out and buy something new every time something new hits the market. And as I look through, I see lots of that stuff in here that trucks and cars. My goodness, for an organization, we buy a lot of vehicles every year. Maybe one of two things. Either we need to start looking at having training so we don't abuse our vehicles, or we better hire vehicles that last longer. Because we sure go through a lot of them. And I've never seen a study, even though we've asked about it, to say, if we bought a car that was more expensive but it lasted longer, is that better economically, or to just keep buying the cheap ones that break every 6 or 7 years? I just see so much in here that I think that the other part of my frustration is, why are we having to make the decisions? We have hired people, we pay these agency directors good money. Why do we have to do it? Why can't we say, okay, you're getting a 2% increase over last year's budget, let them deal with it? Why do we have to come in and do all this all the time to be the bad guys? Why do we have to be the ones to say, you can't do this, manage your program, The biggest one that I think is a threat to us, and we've seen it, how many tax increases we've had in the last couple of years, is we have, and Bruce knows this probably better than anybody, we have Park and Rec, we have an authority making decisions on how they spend their money and what they do, and then we have to fund it. And we don't have a say in those decisions. They're made, you know, and then here it comes, here's what we gotta have. And then only one last comment I'll have is I read through there on the Millbrook Marsh Boardwalk. They wanna do another engineering concept. We've done so many we know what it needs. We need to have somebody, well, let's hire an engineer, hire whatever we gotta do the drawings to put them, to make the boardwalk. Because until we do that, we're gonna be sitting here doing this for 20 years and throwing money after study, after study, after study, after study. Let's just get somebody, get an engineering firm, go in there and design it, say, here's what the drawing is, here it is. And then we take that, then that'll tell you how much you gotta spend, tell you how much longer it's gonna take you to get it, and we can put it up. And until we do that, and we just keep doing these studies and, you know, let's get an engineering firm to look at it, I just get frustrated with all that. So from my standpoint, if I throw Hessfield in this, my initial knee-jerk reaction is I'm not going to pass any of it till we talk about Hessfield. Harris Township's done that before, and I can do it again. So,
Tracy, you have comments on specific items?
I do. Okay. I kind of went through, I think these are, I guess I started with the Whitehall concessions. There's no breakdown of costs along there. What are you selling? Why are you, what? And I didn't bring the paper, I'm a mess today. I have problems with this because there's no breakdown. What are you selling? Why are these your projections? Because you have projections in there. Why are these your projections? How do you know? Have you said, okay, well, all these tournaments, a quarter of the people who come in purchase food. Okay, well, if a quarter of the people who come in purchase food, what are they purchasing? Then you can go and say, okay, here are some projections that we have, but I see none of that. I see that we bought these food carts for $27,000 when Bud was here, and I was not here yet, and they were supposed to pay for themselves in a very short period of time. Well, I see a net profit of a little over $1,000 from concessions from those or from everything. And I don't even know what that profit is in concessions because it doesn't necessarily say.
15.4%.
Okay, that's fine, but it's still only
Which is
$1,000,
within-
$1,200, and these were supposed to pay for themselves when we initially talked about them from the very beginning, very quickly. Well, at $1,200 or whatever it is, I can't remember the exact number, these things are not paying for themselves. So I guess, like, when I look at concessions and everything, I don't think we should be, I think we should be fairly self-sufficient, you know, when it comes to that, because I don't know about using taxpayer money to supplement concessions when, you know, they're not.
So as far as the actual concession sales across our parks and the various vending that we do, we have a 15.4% profit margin, which is in the expected 10 to 20% from the National Parks Association.
That's fine, but you're not telling me what the costs are. Just because we have a profit margin of this is the amount we sold and this is what we bought it for is not telling me what my return on investment is on that, the stuff that we buy, all the equipment and all of this and all of that, but we're paying our employees. So, I mean, is that included in that profit margin? I don't think so, because there's no breakdown of anything. So, I mean, I guess I get a little salty when, because I'm a business owner and I happen to own Duffy's Tavern, I get a little salty when we look at these things in just a low-level light. Do I believe in concessions? Well, I kind of do, but I just think that we have no information on what we're doing, and I don't think that's right. I'm a little, what else did I say? I think that staffing will be an issue. Do we know about, I'm assuming we know about the licensing for a commercial kitchen. I can't imagine that somewhere later along the line that you talked a little bit about how much that the Whitehall concession, the kitchen will cost. I forget what that number is. I can't imagine a commercial kitchen being that cheap. I don't know whether things have been priced out or,
You're thinking of a restaurant kitchen.
no, I'm thinking
And
of a
that
little,
is-
little commercial kitchen. It doesn't
You-
cost that much?
No, we don't do things that you would do in a commercial kitchen. We can't without putting in all the venting and the hoods and everything else. This is basic hot dogs,
No
microwavable-
dishwasher then?
No, we
Okay.
don't have to have, most of the food that people are eating is cooked out on a grill that is even outside of the main concessions. Right? We don't need any of the fancier equipment that most people think about, which is why it is only
Okay.
$10,000 for the kitchen equipment.
Okay. I just want to make sure, no dishwasher.
Yeah. So all of those things
No ice machine.
overcomplicate a concession
Okay.
stand.
We just bought an ice machine that killed me. So, but at any rate, okay, so then we went down to the, I should really just go through the book instead of this. The sponsorship for the Parks program, was that in, okay. For training, okay. I guess I don't really understand when I look at this. I grant you it's only $3,000. It's not ranked as a ranking, but still, even just looking at this and saying, you know,
Can you provide me your page number?
see 20-19. I can't understand the request, because if you want to set up a sponsorship, then set up a sponsorship. I don't understand why we have a request for money to set up the sponsorship. It doesn't say why we need the money. And that's another problem I have. Oftentimes, you know, it's unclear why you're asking for the money. I mean, so that makes it difficult for me. Before I issue money on, for myself, if I want to do some kind of, this could be maybe advertising or something, but before I do that, I want to make it very clear that I am able to do this. It's a good program, and before I even start or even ask for money. But this is like just one of the things that goes on that kind of is annoying coming through, as far as thinking of what we have to spend. I guess like when I looked at the skid steer and it said, I don't know much about skid steers, I'm not gonna lie, but I love the line that says the newer equipment ensures that the agency won't need to replace or repair this equipment as frequently. Duh. I did laugh really hard, but I don't, like, it says like, I don't know if we have terrain that needs to be, there's no explanation for little old me. And there just needs to be a couple little things that say, we do have challenging terrain that this skid steer is giving us trouble with. I mean, I want a little bit more meat so that I can see what's going on, because I don't know. Just a little bit of, you know, we have this and this is why we're asking. The gator, has it always been electric?
Yes.
Okay, that was my question. I was reading through and I realized that the fire protection program is not me. But I did have a question in there, why we need a $200,000 boiler.
For the building?
Yeah, I was unsure about why we needed a $200,000 boiler. Did you read that in there?
I have read them all, but there are a number of proposals, and I don't know exactly which page.
I mean, like I said, I know it's not, but
That's for one of the
ultimately,
buildings. For one of the fire
ultimately it does, but then I started, like, I Googled it, and I said, and I was wondering why we need two captains of field services and why they need two separate vehicles, and do they all work at the same time, or how that works. But then again, it's not me, but ultimately I do think that affects us in some ways. With the amount of money that's spent in Alpha Fire Company, I think it does affect the entire cog. So, and I can't remember where I saw it, but it was in here. I looked at it before. I thought I marked it.
It's fire thing, we don't mess with fire.
But like I said, I mean, I understand. It was just a couple questions I had, and because ultimately, I feel like it affects all of us. So maybe not, but I just feel it does. So at any rate, code. I'm so sorry.
Now you woke
I, I wrote something down. I don't know if I should read it. Mark, should I read this?
Entirely up to you.
I feel like every time code asks for something, there's no way I can say no. Because of the budget you hold and the account balance you hold. And I guess I have no understanding, I've watched the account balance, and I have no understanding why the account balance is the way it is. So there's no way for me to ever say, I said, it's like looking at your 17-year-old son who just received access to their huge trust and trying to say no. That's how I kind of feel sometimes when it comes to code.
So first of all, the budget and the fund balance at the Center Region Code Administration, new construction side, is based on pre-purchase of service. So when you come into the office and drop off a set of plans, you bring in 40% of the anticipated permit fee. That is what will be anticipated to be spent on the administration portion of the permit. So all the plan review, all of the admin costs for that permit. When you pick up the permit, you pay the rest of the 60%.
Mm-hmm.
That 60% is now all the field inspection portion of the permit.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on the duration of the permit, which can be up to 5 years from the date of pickup, you have paid for all the inspections that go with the permit.
Mm-hmm.
So unless we actually are going out and you've brought us out needlessly, so for example, you've called us, you haven't completed the work that you claim you did, and there is nothing for us to inspect, those inspection costs are all front loaded. It's kind of like going to an attorney and paying a retainer, and we're working off of that retainer. So regionally, that fund balance is the retainer for work that in some cases can be up to 5 years long for us to inspect. And quite honestly, some of those we spend a great deal of time compared to what we get, and then larger projects, obviously there's an economy of scale. But that fund balance is that paid forward.
Yes, I understand that, but it seems like the fund balance is always incredibly high. And it seems, well,
Could you yield for a second? I got a really good question.
okay, I yield.
Let me ask you a question.
Yes,
Okay, you have a bunch of code guys, right?
yes,
And you put them in, every year in your budget, you put money in there to pay their wages for the whole
Yes.
year, okay? So if I'm really a thinking man, these guys get paid the same whether they inspect something that was permitted this year or 4 years ago, correct?
that would be correct.
Okay, so you put in every year, you put in the budget, how much you're gonna pay all your guys. So I would say, well, if there's ones you're trying to catch up on or you get ahead, it would be overtime. You would have to pay them overtime for those ones that you got 3 or 4 years ago, correct? In other words, if you got something that you need to permit, do you hire more people to go out and do those ones that you collected 4 years ago? Or do you pay, or the same guys that work every day do them?
The same guys who, the
So
staff
why-
today.
So then why do you need money in there $1 million sitting in there to take care of past permits? Because you're paying the guys every year the same amount to do the permits.
Because ethically, I need to have the permit pay for what
Well,
they're doing
Unfortunately,
versus,
our taxpayers don't care about ethically. They care about how much we have to send in there. And that's what I said, you're double dipping. You're putting it in there, and then you already have paid for all your people to go. I looked at the 6 month, what we got the other, was that May, the end of May?
June 30th.
No, the financial.
Yes, the header was wrong.
Okay,
There are the-
June 30th. So far this year to date, you paid $2,000 in overtime.
Mhm.
So why do we need $1 million to pay $2,000 worth of overtime? I think you're double dipping there. I think you need to go back and look at that as far as that fund balance. You need to pay attention to that because she's right. We don't need that big a fund balance.
I think the problem that I have with the larger fund balance, and I mean, I understand it sets you up to be a little bit more secure in your area, but I think it also sets you up, just sets the taxpayer up to say, you know, well, we're paying more in taxes, basically, because of this. So, Don't shake your head at me, bud.
He's falling asleep.
It's not tax money, that's the
But it is, it's taxpayer money that's going in there. So, it's the same thing as what's going into the cog in a way, as far as I can see, and as far as what I'm concerned about it. But I am concerned about that. And I'm concerned also, when it comes down to it, that, we really don't have, like, if you come and say, well, we're replacing this vehicle, because, it's our standard replacement policy, or it's this, or it's that. I question whether this is just a standard thing to do, this is something that needs to be done, or this is something I have no choice about because of your fund balance. And I'm uncomfortable with that sometimes. I have trust, but I'm uncomfortable. Like I said, I feel like I can't ever say no.
So when we replace a vehicle in the Center Region Code Administration, if the vehicle has any usable life left in it, so it's still suitable to drive, still serviceable, then it is offered out to the other COG agencies first.
Yes.
And is provided to that COG agency at no cost. So there's no payment from that COG agency to the code administration for that vehicle. So for example, a number of years ago, we had an F-250. The F-250, this was probably about 11 years ago. That F-250 had some body cancer, had some problems. It was replaced with the current F-350. When that F-350 entered service, we actually paid to have the body cancer fixed and have the vehicle basically made sure it was safe. We transferred it to Parks at zero cost, and then they used that vehicle for a number of years until it was to the point where it was no longer reasonable to fix that vehicle. We've done the same thing with the library, for example. The library has a vehicle. They were working with a delivery service at one point in time to be able to pick up books and deliver books. We've transferred a vehicle to the library, for example. Same thing. We make sure it's well maintained, but when it is replaced at our agency, we're giving it to one of the other COG agencies. If none of the other COG agencies want it, then we reach out to the municipalities. Any vehicles that are no longer serviceable, so we had a number of vehicles that, because of frame rust, so they were Ford Escapes, and they rust.
Why are we buying Ford Escapes?
So we had made the decision, public safety had made the decision that that was the vehicle we were buying at the time, and that's what we bought. So when those were taken out of service, they were either given to State College High School for use in their vehicle program. So they were transferred to State College High to be able to do body work on, to do mechanical work on, and so on, with the agreement then when they are done with them, they will be transferred to the Center County Fire Training Site for use by the fire departments in the region. Same thing, we had vehicles that State College didn't want, the high school didn't want, and they were, again, not roadworthy anymore. They got handed over to the training site. They'll use them for vehicle extrication training first. After they use them for vehicle extrication training, CPI students will actually clean them fully down, and then they'll be used as burn vehicles to be able to get another life. So our goal is to get 4 lives or more out of the vehicle, and to get the taxpayers' money's worth out of the vehicle before it's truly disposed of.
I guess the other thing is, like, if you have a vehicle that you're passing on to the library or to the municipalities, and nobody wants it and it still has useful life, why is code not using that useful life?
Typically, the agencies that we're turning them over to are not putting the kind of miles and not doing the duty life that we are with them.
Well, I talked to your code inspector when he came out to Duffy's. I've talked to a couple of your code inspectors, and they gave me the life of their vehicle, the age of their vehicle, and I asked how many miles are on them, and it's not nearly as many miles as I put on my car. It says a 2011. Okay. So I guess, useful, I don't know whether the car is not as reliable, perhaps that we should be looking at more reliable, less rust, less everything. But that's where my problem is. It seems like there's no searching for any other option but a Ford Escape. There's no searching for any, if they rust, well, what cars don't rust? Are there cars out there that don't rust anymore, or is more than this? Can we get a car that we can get 150,000 miles out of? Yes, we can. And I just don't understand why we aren't looking. We never even peek.
As I've indicated before, if you look in the budget document, it says or equivalent. We have no problem going to public safety and looking at, based on the requirements that we've been given by the general forum, which is to move to alternative fuels, basically going to either plug-in hybrids or all-electric vehicles. We have absolutely no problem with part of this process before we make our next round of purchases, as I've indicated before, looking at which vehicles you wish us to purchase and bringing that to the Public Safety Committee.
I would really appreciate that, because both me and, I'm so bad with names. The supervisor from Ferguson Township have said this over and over again, that we would like some documentation on other vehicles that we can take a look at that maybe are better than the Ford Escapes that we're receiving, because I just don't think they have the life in them that others might.
And one of the challenges I will tell you that we have is we buy off of government contract when we buy vehicles, because we don't have to go through the bidding process to get a vehicle, because I've talked to numerous car dealers that have all told me they won't go into the government bidding process because they've already sold the car off the lot before the bids are closed. So part of it is what is actually available to us through a government purchasing process. And those are some of our limitations. But again, I'm more than happy to work with public safety to be able to look at those and look at the limitations we have and to make a better selection.
I would be much more comfortable if we could look at stuff like that.
Again, before the purchase is actually made, we're just putting in the budget what we have put in based on our normal replacement process and then what we've been doing. But we have no problem looking at the model and the vehicle itself with public safety if you wish to choose a different vehicle for us to pursue.
I just think that through this whole entire process, I feel like there's been very little information provided, and everything is just status quo, and let's just keep going the way we're going, and if there's no other way. And I just think that there can be other ways that perhaps we could do some cost cutting, significant cost cutting, and we could take a look at some different things, and we could have different expectations of different things. So I think that's one thing that would make me more comfortable with your fund balance. I don't like your fund balance, but I'm just one of many. No offense to you, please, but I don't like the fund balance. So, but anyway, I think that's all I have for you. I do not. Oh, I wanted to know also: is there a possibility of coming up with? I mean, does every single person there need a car, or do some people work in the office while other people can take a car to go out, or is?
So the only people that have dedicated vehicles are the field inspectors. So, for example, the 2 commercial plans examiners that work predominantly in the office do not have a vehicle. I do not have a vehicle dedicated to myself. Sean Thompson, who is our administrative head, who also does customer service, doesn't have a vehicle dedicated to him either. So the only people that have vehicles that are dedicated to them are people that are doing routine inspections most of their day.
Okay, well, I would also submit to you, like somebody had mentioned before, that the onboarding process when I came in was not so hot. So I would suggest that we have some more information available, some written information available that is presented to a new person coming in to eliminate some of these questions and these problems and to make people able to see this in a better light. So
that was something I've discussed with other municipalities coming up, that I can't go back and change how you were onboarded.
No, I know that.
In the future, the plan is, since this is an election year, at the beginning of next year, there will be a new onboarding process for the newly elected officials, and we will also invite existing elected officials to come on. It was clear through comments that we've already seen from some communities that there are a number of elected officials who really don't know what we do. You know, there was one for the request for the electronic plans review tables, and they questioned why we would buy plan review tables for third-party inspectors, because they were unaware that we did all of those inspections in-house.
They don't have a mark. Mark answers most of my questions. He's been a godsend. I also, under the code, you mentioned public education. I thought that there was a program going on already about the public education. Remember, you had spoken about that before.
So we do ongoing public education. So some of the items that we have, for example, one of the things that we're asking for is a combination of a subscription to the codes for the library and for the high school. Because one of the things that we're trying to do is, for example, we have an electrical inspector's job open right now. We have very, very few applicants for that job. Some of that is, again, people don't know what we do on our side. They know what it is to be an electrician, but they don't necessarily understand all of what goes along with being an electrical inspector. They come out of, a lot of times, the vote technical programs, and they understand kind of the pieces that go in the field, but they don't necessarily get really good experience with the code sections. Somebody tells you, do it this way because of this, but they don't get the opportunity to look at the codes, because those cost money. So we want to get a subscription, electronic subscription for the library, both SCLO as well as the State College Library. There is some programs available at ICC, which is the International Code Council, that are being made available that would allow students to be able to take online programs and learn more about codes and do it independent of the instructor in the classroom. So it's not something the instructor has to do directly. The instructor can facilitate it and allow them to log in. They would have a login, but we would basically purchase that licensing for them, and also have, the idea is to have some scholarships available, allow them to actually get some certifications. So if you had somebody who was graduating in the carpentry program, for example, they may be able to have an inspector's, I don't want to say license because they wouldn't have the actual license in Pennsylvania, but they would have the certification through ICC that proves that they know how to basically inspect the building. So that makes them more marketable as an employee to somebody who's going to go out to work, because they obviously know the code. Later, that would allow them to also come to us and have a certification already under their belt, and we wouldn't have to do that education early on. So the idea is to try and build that workforce and the knowledge base for the contractors as well.
Okay. Oh, the permit program technician.
Yes.
I understand, like, we went through we went through the process before, and it was stated that we want this person to basically have a year's full of experience at what, I believe Kathy, correct?
That's correct.
I remember,
Ms.
remember that.
Ms. Woods
Kathy
is
does.
retiring and
Yes.
has given us
Yep.
advance notice.
I have to say, I'm not so sure how I feel about hiring somebody to shadow somebody for a year or more. I just don't know. I just don't know how I feel about that. That just doesn't sit right with me, because, I mean, I guess when it comes to industry, I've never heard that being done in industry. So that to me just seems a little bit gratuitous, and it's just a comment. So, we talked about the COG building HVAC. Is the hot water heater in there 2012 or 2012 or 2018?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
Because it says both in here. Let's see, the Hessfield lighting. Just a comment, that Hessfield has been grossly ignored in favor of other parks, and I don't like that. I agree with Frank, I'm disgusted. I'm absolutely disgusted that even when we go into facilities, we're still throwing it back, and we're still throwing it here and throwing it there, and we're not moving forward with any of it, and I don't like it. The other thing that I had a question about that I think for some reason is not on here, the little things, like picnic tables, it would be nice to know, like for the pavilions, how many are they're going under there, and what are they made of, just to get an idea of your costs and everything, just to give me what we're getting for that cost that you're asking for. That's just these little things that keep me from asking questions. The lawnmower, okay, the commercial lawnmower. I don't know. I know that when we bought the electric lawnmower that we use at Duffy's, and yes, it's a residential, and it's a steel, so it's a good one. We brought it home. We were promised that the battery would last an hour and a half. It lasted 45 minutes. We took it back. Okay, brought another one home. Same thing. Found that we need 3 batteries to do that little lot there. I was just wondering what the expectation, what the research has been done on these electric lawnmowers, and I also am wondering why none of the landscapers use electric lawnmowers. So is there a reason for that? Do we know?
That's a question to submit for Jim
Okay,
Carpenter.
well, I would really like to know that, because I'm sorry, I would like to talk to the landscapers and find out what it is they have against electric lawnmowers, because they're not using them.
Jim is as good as any landscaper in this area, so I'll take his word first.
And I don't, I'm not a big believer, to me, I grant you, I want to be green. I want to be green. But lithium batteries are horrible. And what's going to happen all of a sudden if we have all these lawnmowers that are electric and they run like the steel, and now we need a charging room for all these batteries that we have to run it during the day. I just want to make sure that we're not going that direction. Also, there are other issues with electric lawnmowers, I've read about, and I like to know where we're going with these things, because I'm not so sure I agree with that. That'd be I would like to know.
Okay.
That's a definite, I'd like to know. And I think that that's probably all the questions I probably had more, but, I think, am I good?
You're good.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
You thought the current document was thick.
What?
I'll have, my comments are relatively straightforward. One, let's finish Whitehall Road. We've spent a lot of money there. I think that needs to be a priority. 2, Hess Fields. Let's make sure we continue to move forward with a temporary solution, pushing the sewer solution, because I think that's our ultimate solution. And I do have a question about the field lights, because the authority still hasn't determined whether they want to go with the 4-field solution or the 3-field solution.
The authority forwarded a proposal for the 3-field master plan,
Yes,
which is now going to general form in a couple weeks.
okay.
Came to facilities too.
Yeah,
Okay.
it had to go through the authority first, then facilities, then it went through finance
All right.
last week, and now it goes to the executive committee next week, general forum.
Okay, but we need to resolve that before we start talking about lights.
That's why there are multiple options. That's
Okay.
why there's a range.
But let's push that one. My final one is, there's so much in here, I feel like I'm being asked to micromanage COG's budget process, and I'm not a manager. You're a manager. Okay, so look at the overall priorities and come up with something that kind of matches the COLA. Now, I can see our budget growing a bit year by year because people are asking for more services and such. So if the COLA is 3% or 2.5%, I could see it being, our overall budget going up 4% or something like that. But let's, and a few years back, we had a process where we said, here's your budget increase. And
Yes.
I don't want to hamstring you with that.
No, I understand.
But that's,
That trails this process, unfortunately. The process that was set by the finance committee wants to use the June CPI, which comes out tomorrow. So therefore, I can't make recommendations ahead of time, not knowing what those numbers are going to be before we get through this process.
Okay, but you understand my overall goal is
My goal will be, and we'll have more conversations next year going through this process, is that the committees take a harder look at everything that is brought to them. Everything that is in here was looked at by one committee or another in the process before it ever made it into the book. And unfortunately, nothing is getting cut in the committee process. Basically, everything is getting passed on to the full group in that process.
And every single item in here sounds great.
Yep.
Until I add them up.
Yep.
Yes.
That's sum total of my comments. Anybody else want to
I
kick
just
in?
have one quick comment. We beat these guys up pretty bad tonight.
I'm so sorry.
This is what we get
I would
paid
be
for.
remiss as a member of the finance committee, the one area where we spent money, I think it was last year, and definitely last year, maybe a little bit the year before, was when we authorized a new person for MPO for grants. We have more than paid for that person. The amount of monies, you know, Kimberly, about, I know we've got a lot of grants from that one person just from adding the grant.
I would say just in the next couple of years, it's about $250,000 in additional grants that we've had in the last couple months. So we're getting a bunch of grants
from that process. So we have had some successes.
What's the total dollar increase for Harris Township on these pages? Have you had
Just under 130,000, if everything in here were to be
included
in the budget.
Just Harris Township.
Just
side.
Harris Township share would be I think just under 130.
Is that over and above what we are currently doing, or is that part of?
That would be over and above what we are currently doing.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Yeah, my other observation, and it's a compliment to the community. If you look at what the current building scene looks like in the center region, from 120 million at the casino, 340 million for the hospital, everything on campus, we're dealing under construction now about $1.4 billion worth. That's where that surplus comes from. We're doing something right when we keep building and building and building. That's success breeds success. Compared to other parts of the state, and I travel the state with organizations, they keep saying, how do you do things so well here? Come and visit us. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's one comment, the boiler replacement is on C31-4. I got stuck there.
It's for the fire company, we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, but it does ultimately affect the taxpayer, which can affect us.
We'll be fine.
There's a lot of sections.
Sorry. Apologize about 5,000 times.
So that isn't in this year's proposal. That
No,
is over
but-
the next 5 years.
I just was wondering why there's a $200,000 boiler that we need. I wasn't quite sure about that. Just seems like, I Googled it. It was like, okay, move on, please. Just want to let you know.
Ben, I think we beat you up enough.
That's quite all right. Thank you all very much.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I move to adopt proposed ordinance number 375.
I'll second that. Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the sale of the 2009 Bobcat S250 skid steer to the Erie County Technical School in the amount of $20,000.
Second.
Okay, Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes.
Can we keep going? Move to approve resolution 25-12 adopting the Center County 2025 hazardous mitigation plan update as the official hazard mitigation plan of Harris Township.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on this item?
Is there anything different in this plan than what we're currently operating under?
It's just an update, so nothing significantly different, but they certainly went through and updated
Yeah.
things that have changed in the last
Yeah.
decade, so yeah.
And the fact that they worked with Michael Bacon.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Other comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes. We have the manager's report.
There's a few items I will highlight from my report. Number 3, if anybody who has not gotten back to me yet about the PML Leadership Summit, let me know. I know Denny and Frank are both attending, and I have already registered them. That is October 1st through the 4th. So I believe that's a Wednesday through a Saturday.
Football week.
Is there football weekend?
I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up.
First to the fourth, I'll take a peek.
Number 4, we did have our kickoff meeting for the pedestrian crossing out here on Bull Avenue. One of the highlights that I'll point out is that we believe the concerns about right-of-way in terms of property ownership has been resolved. They did some initial survey work, and they believe there's adequate right-of-way on the Bull Mansion side not to need to have any easements from the Bull Mansion property, which is a good outcome. Why is it going to take a year? Well, according to the timeline provided during the kickoff meeting, they're going to be spending several months for the design portion of this, and also doing environmental clearances and things of that nature. That'll get us into the winter months when we would do the project bid, and then construction would begin in the spring. So hopefully it would be done before the end of summer. It really comes down to how well things move along in terms of getting a contractor lined up, but it could be done earlier next year, definitely.
For number 6, by the way,
Yes.
I went down 322 today and back. They're putting brand new big yellow signs up that said slow down, and so we're seeing some results from that meeting already.
Is there a swear word first?
What's that?
Is there a swear word first?
I don't know. That's all that.
Frank and I attended the Route 45 discussion.
Yes.
That was an interesting opportunity to just share things without PennDOT having a lot of predetermined projects and ideas.
Right.
So what do you want? What would you like? Different kind of operation for PennDOT.
Yeah, and they had some interesting findings, I think, on speed and other factors that maybe we weren't expecting.
Yeah.
And speaking of speed, the last thing I'll mention there is number 5. I know some of you already saw a preview of this, and that is our new speed signs have arrived. We've put them out. There's one right now on Bullsburg Pike and one on West Main Street. We were just testing them out, seeing how they work. I showed a couple of you here before the meeting started how I can log in and we can just see live data basically of where things are in terms of speed, and I even get pictures of people that are driving too fast.
Is that the one we got Nigel on going too fast?
Well, we talked about whether or not we would have him speeding to get here, yes. But I'm going to do, Bruce brought this up, I'll do kind of an overview of how they're working maybe here in the next meeting or two and show you just kind of some of the preliminary results and how we can use these tools to hopefully calm traffic down in the township.
Darren also said that you can actually turn them off and you can still get the speed of the cars coming through.
That's what they're set at right now.
Oh, very nice.
Yes.
Very nice. I wanted to ask a question that's not on here, if that's okay. What's going on with our lovely neighbor up in Willowbrook?
Rocky, Mr. Rocky? Yeah, so that property, Walt just left, but they had I believe there was a continuance. He did start, the siding is almost up 3/4 of the way up the side of the house. New siding is being put on the house, on the side where it had fallen off and there was fiberglass and other things floating around the neighborhood. We have another hearing scheduled as well for the vehicles, for the inoperable vehicle on the property. That's scheduled, I believe, July 30th. Other than that, I think there's general compliance in terms of mowing the lawn. It's been being mowed where it's not exceeding 8 inches so far this year. That was something that Todd did speak to the property owner about and reminded him that 8 inches is our new requirement, and I don't believe we've had any issues with him not mowing. So that's been a good outcome in that regard. But we'll see how the hearing turns out later on this month with the vehicle issue.
He's got an attachment to those vehicles.
He got rid of one, so just one more to go and he'll be in compliance.
Okay, I'm just wondering.
That was all I had.
Frank, I'll tell you why it's taking so long to get that crossing, because the state is doing it.
That's true.
Okay, approval of vouchers.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to approve voucher number 2025-6, the amount of $450,000, $825.38.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion passes. Committee reports. Executive Committee canceled the general forum meeting. I think we did well. Parks Capital did not meet. Parks Governance did not meet. Staff is working on documentations and suggestions for bylaws and stuff like that. The first item up is the suggestion for bylaws by the authority, and then looking at the go on from there to MOUs between the authority and the COG General Forum, and and then we're going to continue to look at the structure and what the purpose of what's going to be rebranded from Parks Capital to Parks Committee, and what exactly its function will be. So it's moving along, not quickly, but I anticipate we may get there by the end of the year. And the authority just continues to work on, their priorities and the developing the Whitehall Road and how to proceed forward with that.
Does the authority feel the necessity for Hessfield? And of the members sitting around the table, is there a vibe to do something, or?
Well, in this year's capital budget, I believe, there was the money to do the engineering study for the facility at Hessfield's. But it's got to be, the next step is going to be, as I said earlier, one is pushing for the sewer. That's going to take a while, and getting an intermediate product in place.
What's that product going to be this summer? What is the product?
That product's going to be a large trailer type facility,
Okay.
ADA accessible. And they come in a variety of but we can rent one for a weekend for a couple $1,000s. And when I find out when it's going to be there, I'll alert you so that you can take a trip out there and see what it looks like.
That's a weekend rental? For every
Yeah.
weekend we're doing this?
No, we're going to do it once. We're going to do
Okay,
it once
okay.
so you can see what it looks like, what it feels like. And again, there's some research that needs to continue to be done in terms of secondhand markets, resale value, the Cadillac version versus the Chevy version. So there'll be something for us to look at and think about and see if that's how we want to proceed as our intermediate product. I think the general consensus is we want to get away from the porta potties and
The
get,
Yugo version.
and get some, get something that's nice enough that you can get in there, you can wash your hands, that kind of stuff. So.
That's awful, especially with the new urinal versions.
Okay. Human resources.
Okay, we met last week. I zoomed in from sunny Folly Beach, South Carolina. We decided that it would be a good idea to add a section to our meeting etiquette guidelines regarding confidentiality of certain things and just discretion on what information is shared. So that document should be showing up at Executive Committee and hopefully General Forum. Another item we just...
That doesn't include opinions, does it?
No, I mean,
Just thought I'd
it's
ask.
just basically simple things like,
What are you laughing at? I'm smiling.
apparently some people don't realize that when you're discussing something in executive session, that is confidential until it's brought forward in public session and some other things. So anyway, so there will be guidelines included in there. The other topic we discussed was HR metrics. That's, time tracking of activities, and I brought that up before, a couple meetings ago, I think, that was brought up. How much do we want to track? And basically the consensus everywhere was, well, we don't need to track anything that's going to cost us more to track, but the way this system works, a lot of things are available. A lot of activities are available to be tracked, like time on the phone, time on, computer doing this or that, time onboarding, things like this that could be helpful to staff to figure out how much time should be dedicated to different activities and therefore, staffing. So that was the extent of our conversation there. What do you? Please, you have a question?
I do have a question for you.
Go ahead.
I was thinking about time in the bathroom.
Ah.
So I
don't think that's in there, no.
I'm sorry. Okay, so in here it says something. One of the things that bothered me about, like, you want to go to human resources, okay? There was this suggestion in here about doing surveying, people about their job satisfaction or whatever. It bothered me a lot when I read it because we used to be more interactive, significantly more interactive, and I think that we've gotten away from that a lot. So being more interactive, we could see when somebody was struggling, or a boss could see, or there was more interaction and ability to discuss it. Now we sit next to a cubicle and we send an email. And so when you're sitting there talking about a survey now that they're sending to people, it's just one more thing that's keeping us from being face to face. And I just think that sometimes the face-to-face is just not what's stressed anymore as far as human resources is concerned. So just a suggestion, just a comment about what they said in here about that.
Okay, interesting.
Agreed.
Yeah, I definitely understand where you're coming from. Yeah, climate action and sustainability was today. I had a hard time following along the meeting because I was forced to do it on a cell phone, and my earbuds charge died, and so I was trying to listen to it on speaker. And the cog room, building room system doesn't really come across very well if you don't have good amplification. But anyway, the things that we were talking about were in environmental purchasing policy in the COG, and how that could be fine-tuned to increase our greenness, shall we say, to keep up with our goal of being carbon-free by 2050, or I don't remember what that was. 2030. Okay. We'll see. And the only other thing, we had a final report from our AmeriCorps sustainability coordinator, and she apparently did quite a few things and coordinated workshops regarding focusing on renewable energy and community resiliency topics. So anyway, apparently we're quite happy with her performance for the past year. And that's it.
Mr. Haymeister, land use and community infrastructure.
Neither met.
Good. Neither one of your committees met? Lucky you.
You go picnicking?
Yeah.
Okay.
Finance committee.
Okay, finance committee. Oh, I kind of went off. I did a bud on finance committee. We did the resolution to approve or to send the new Hessfield master plan to the executive committee and whatnot. And I kind of went off a little bit. Number one, I asked, I said, okay, has anybody talked to UAJA about the sewer and what they're gonna need to do this yet? Look like deer in the headlights. I said, here we go. I said, this is Whitehall Regional Park 2. You know, everybody's gonna wait till it's oh gee, we gotta do that, it's gonna take 2 more years. I said, we'll be 15 years down the road, and underwater basket weaving will be the sport then, they won't even need the fields. So that was one of the things, but as something I wanna, if we put this on tomorrow's work session, one of the things I think we can discuss here, it kinda hit me, you know, that maybe we can get COG to move, we did it with the facilities committee, maybe we put a Hess Field ad hoc committee together and push from another direction, you know, and put some of our reps on, maybe some of the COG people, but we need to get off our butts on this and just start pushing from every angle we can. But anyway, we did that. We also are working on a fund balance policy, which hopefully when we're done with it, it's gonna clear up a lot of this, like we talked about with Walt tonight, where they're gonna have a certain amount of fund balance that they can keep, and we're gonna that's what's gonna help slow down this growth in the budget. Because if you look, last year we got told that we cleaned out the fund balances. Well, look in that little report and see what they're projecting at the end of the year. We didn't even come close to cleaning them out. I think we dropped our overall fund balance by about 33%. That's it. And we quote budgeted to get rid of all of them last year. Well, that didn't happen. So in my opinion, we got more room to cut. So that's what happened in finance. State College Area Connector, we all know what's going on there. We're just waiting for the NEPA to come back. MPO, okay, I'm stacking stuff on my notes. We talked about, again, on MPO, we had some safety things that we did. Mostly we went through all our, everything's due. We went through the TIP, we went through, you know, the United Plan, you know, just all of them, and we're working on getting those through, and that's a process that continues. And then we talked again about some of the safety things that we talked about. I'm on the safety committee, so every time we get together, and I don't know, I think I told you guys last time, but we put the 3 of the 4 most dangerous places in Center County, or 3 of them are right down here. One's the Bear Meadows intersection, one's in front of Tate's, and the other's in front of Coons.
Which intersection, Frank?
The Bear Meadows,
3 most dangerous intersections?
no, 3 of the most dangerous sections of road.
Sections of the road.
Yeah, this one down here, the Bear Meadows, Elks intersection there, right in front of Tate Farms and Coons Farm. So we are pushing that from the safety. So mostly what I'm doing in MPO is safety, but MPO, we're starting to see some real benefits from having that grant writer. So, and she's doing a great job. She's, you know, Marcella always was on top of things, and she's really doing a great job with it. So that's all I got.
Facilities.
I found it interesting, like we did pass on, where is it? Because I don't remember anything. We did pass on the master plan with the 3 fields to, I guess, the finance committee, correct? But interestingly enough, like, I got a little salty when we went to vote on it, and I believe this is what we voted on when Ferguson Township voted no. And I got a little salty about it because I'm like, I said, it's all good and fine when it's Whitehall, but it's all not so good and fine when it's Hess, and I just don't understand that. I feel like I'm a little late in the game kind, but that's exactly how I felt the entire time we talk about that. But at any rate, and then I found it interesting because I was talking and that's all that really happened in the facilities committee, in the public safety committee. They canceled this month. They canceled not last month, but the month before. I was talking to Mark about some of the things that were listed in here from a public safety standpoint, like things that we review. And when I read through here, there are things in here that I never heard of before. And I've been on the public safety committee long enough, and I'm like nosy enough to not know why I hadn't heard about these things. So, I don't think that as many things are being discussed as they should be as far as the budgeting process in some of these meetings, just to let you know. But however, the meeting did consist of a First Energy update. It was informational, it was nice about how they handle the storms or the microbursts that we had. Also, Jonathan Risley, and Amy did a presentation on the Emergency Management Council discussions, in reference to the storm as well. So that was nice and informative, but it would have been nice if we heard a little bit more about some of the other things that we need to hear about. So, but anyway, that was all we did, and I'm asking if somebody could go to facilities for me, in August.
What day of the week is it?
It's a Tuesday morning at 8:30.
Send an email out and we'll see who can do it. I have to look at my schedule.
Okay.
Quick, Trey, you mentioned something about Whitehall Road versus Township Road again, something about,
I just feel like sometimes when we talk about Hessfield,
was there a vote?
yeah, there was a vote
For what?
for the 3-field versus 4-field.
It was the new master plan.
For the new master plan, basically for Hessfield.
They voted against it.
Yeah, and Ferguson Township voted against it. I did. Amari Patterson voted against it. It made me a little salty, because I was like, we are expected to do things with Whitehall, where this was on the books to do very early, way before Whitehall was even conceived, and it's not been done. And we were promised it would be done if we passed the budget last year, and now, we're just kind of like, oh geez, let's just shuffle. And I guess that's the problem, is that it's like, I don't like this anymore. I don't like the fact that we have things on the books that we should have been doing before we started other projects. And I believe you finish one before you start another. You can plan it, but you finish one before you start another.
I was said from my universities, Ferguson Township is against opening Whitehall Road Park.
Well,
They are.
There's
Oh,
an issue.
absolutely.
There's an issue. That's enough said.
Yep.
why
I
are they
agree.
against opening Whitehall Road Park?
It seems to me that there's a sense that I'm working on this, and a sense of Ferguson
I think it goes back to the
is
green.
done as much as they can to keep that parking deck opening up.
Why?
I don't know the answer to that. If I did, I would approach it. It's a stormwater issue, and as I talked to the engineer, stormwater issue has nothing to do with children playing out in those fields or in those playgrounds. It's a separate issue completely. It's nothing
Maybe
to do
we
with
should
the
sue
rest of
Ferguson
the fields.
Township.
They're not going to acquiesce to any of that. So, we'll see. We'll see.
Is,
We done then?
Benner Lane,
Is that your-
I'm sorry?
we have a building permit for $1.8 million in Benner, on Benner,
Bear Meadows.
Bear Meadow.
Banner Lane?
Benner.
Banner.
Banner. It's supposed to be Banner. It's
Banner.
misspelled on there.
Yeah, it's misspelled, I
Hey,
think. It should be
Chair, I make a motion we adjourn.
Banner Way, isn't it?
Banner Way.
Banner Way, okay.
Yeah.
We're
$1.8
talking
million
about stuff that
building
isn't even
permit.
there now.
We have a motion on the table.
Yep,
Yes.
Second.
We're adjourned.
All right.